Those that know racing know that racing is a team sport. In many series, that team is often behind the pit wall, making the car as efficient and as fast as physics will allow. In those series, there's just one driver that can make the difference, that will take what the engineers and crew have built and bring it across the line first. But that's not the kind of teams we're talking about for the RaceSim Canada Canadian Endurance Series presented by Apex V2R. Today, it's two driver pairings sharing their GT endurance machines in a 120-minute race. The first of 5 rounds takes us just south of the Canadian border to a little town with big importance, Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. Here lies Road America and the first round of the 2021 RaceSim Canada Canadian Endurance Series presented by Apex V2R and Shannonville Motorsport Park. Kyle Heyer alongside Tom O'Gorman for the first of 5 rounds of the 2021 RaceSim Canada Series. A great place to race GTE cars here, Tom. This is something that we haven't done here on Sim TV, a team event. This is the first time ever.
And there's not many bad places to race a GTE car, so this is going to be so much fun. We have about 24 teams entered for a 2-hour feature and a number of rounds coming at us over the next couple of months. And you're right, we don't really do team events very often, so we're both very excited to get this thing going.
Qualifying underway right now, 15 minutes to put down the fastest lap time that you can. We've got just over 20 teams here today. This is a brand new series. We've got support from Apex V2R and, of course, the Shannonville Motorsport Park. The grand prize at the end of this season for eligible entrants will be able to run a race-prepped, I believe it's an FRS or BRZ, Apex V2R race car at Shannonville Motorsport Park. So super exciting prizes on the line. This will take us all the way through May, actually into June, for the last round of the season. And as we head into qualifying here, Tom, GTE cars, we mentioned them at the beginning, there are 5 different manufacturers to choose from, but only 4 are represented here today. No Fords in the field. That car's tricky and hard to drive, but there are a couple of Ferraris. That was a car that is very fast, but maybe underrepresented here today.
Yeah, the Ferrari's actually been proven to be one of the fastest cars in the official series on the iRacing service here over the last couple of weeks. So typically we would expect to see mainly Porsches, and there are a lot of Porsches here today, but there are certainly a fair share of Ferraris as well as Corvette C8 Rs and BMW M8 GTEs as well. So we've got 4 cars on tap, 5 eligible, and the other cool part about it is that those prizes, it's not necessarily the team that wins the championship, it's just it's a random draw at the end. The team that wins the championship gets the most tickets in the hat, but anybody could win this thing. So getting a real world experience for everybody, you want to do as well as you can, and the better you do, the more chances you have at it.
So just over 20 teams joining us here. I believe we've got 22 for the first round of the season. At the top of the board so far here in qualifying, Grid Life RWB with DJ Alessandrini behind the wheel. Very late entrant to the series, literally joined about half an hour ago here, Tom. Drivers that we're familiar with. This is the only non-Canadian team in this field. They're not eligible for the prizing. Every other team, to my knowledge, is. I think there's only one other driver that's not from Canada on one of the other teams, but mostly Canadian representation here today.
So that teal Ferrari is your current pole sitter, teamed with Austin Cobb, who is in close association with and often on teams for endurance races with Apex V2R. You're going to see a lot of Apex V2R around, and another one of those cars were fastest in practice. It was the Apex V2R number 880 team. They sit P2 in qualifying right now. They were quickest in practice, so look for that car to be quick as well.
That's Matt Corrins behind the wheel. You've got familiarity racing him in the real world as well. So running that 911 RSR, that is the popular choice. At a quick glance on the ticker and timing and scoring here, Tom, a lot of Porsches. But this car in the past hasn't been very popular. But what do you think makes it so popular now? I mean, it sounds great, that's for sure, but is it as fast as maybe the Ferrari?
Well, just like real world, we have that favorite little acronym, BOP, here in iRacing. And you just plug a couple of numbers in the files and you can change those around. And iRacing keeps them nice and up to date. And most recently, I think the general consensus is the Porsche is kind of the even strong car. It was really strong going into Daytona, and a lot of people were expecting it to dominate. They actually pulled it back a bit for the 24-hour of Daytona, but in general, that car always performs nice and well. And then certain tracks will favor certain cars. So sure, the teams that you see in the Porsches, maybe they'll do well at every single track, but we'll see other teams ebb and flow. And the key with that is they have to stick with the car for the season. They can't switch it up.
Well, we already mentioned earlier the amount of Porsches and the slim amount of Ferraris. One car that is making an appearance several places throughout the field is this brand new Chevrolet Corvette C8R. Now, this is a car that's relatively new to iRacing, but it's also very stable and pretty quick for what it is. It's a car that I think might be the easy go-to choice here, Tom, but I don't see that many drivers at the front running it. Only 2 in the top 10. And VRS Satellite Racing Blue, driven by Adam Crane, most recent winner in the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series at Barber. He's running this car right now, P3.
And he's teamed with Maxime Detilly, So those two, again, it's not necessarily who's fastest in qualifying, and a 2-hour race is a long, long time. So you want to do well because you want to be able to survive the start, and I think anybody in the top 3 or 4 rows is really at an advantage for a better chance for survival if anything goes south at the beginning of this race. But ultimately, you got to be able to play the long game, and consistency is going to be key.
So consistency is going to be key right now, though. It's all about going very, very fast, and Grid Life RWB still the top of the board. And one of those other VRS satellite racing teams, that's Red, Giuliano Romagnolo, who actually made an appearance in the Porsche Canada Esports Super Cup. He is running 7th right now in one of those Porsche 911 RSRs. So that team running with the number 5 on the timing and scoring today. Other notes about the racetrack, it's 4 miles long here, Tom. Take me through a lap here of Road America. This is a racetrack that's got 14 turns, and it's a whole lot of fun.
And it always feels like you're going somewhere. The long run down the front straightaway into turn 1, a fast right-hander. Kink at turn 2, not really a straightaway, and then another good passing opportunity as the track levels out at turn 3. Then the longest straightaway on the circuit, the second longest straightaway on the circuit through turn 4 and down into turn 5. Another great passing opportunity. Then the big climb up the hill, left-hander at turn 6, flat-out right-hander at turn 7, down the kettle bottoms into turn 8, the hurry downs. Finally, the carousel, almost flat out in these big downforce GT cars, but it's critical to get a good run out of there into the daunting kink before you head down to Canada Corner. Canada Corner faces Canada. Almost everyone here from Canada today, so favorite may be on the track at the right-hander, end of the back straightaway before you head up the hill out of the forest at turn 13, a flat-out left-hander, jumping the curbs, keeping the car barely on the circuit before almost the most challenging corner on the track for me, turn 14, climbing the hill onto the longest straightaway once more to complete the 4-mile track.
And passing under the starter stand to do one of many laps these drivers will do. Again, a 120-minute race here today, Tom, endurance racing. This is on the low end of what I would consider endurance racing, but there will be a mandatory driver swap at 50 to 70 minutes, so you've got a little bit of room to play. What's your strategy here, especially if your team is a little bit skewed in terms of raw pace and talent? Are you going to try to aim for a little bit longer of a stint for one of your drivers versus the other? Or are you going to try to split it right in half?
Well, with that 20-minute pit window, the strategy is pretty locked down. Obviously, we're going to see that pit stop kind of right in the middle, and there are also no full course cautions to my knowledge that we can expect. So things are pretty much run flat out, and to me, that brings the strategy game to where are you on the track and where are you around other people. If you're stuck near somebody, you want to pit pretty early and get back out and clear air. If you're clear running, extend that thing as long as the fuel will let you go.
9 minutes left here in qualifying, just about halfway through, and looks like Grid Life and Apex V2R still the top of the board, separated by just under 0.2 of a second. Look a little bit deeper here in the field, find Overtake Racing in one of these BMW M8 GTEs. Now this car, all the jokes are out and available for this car because of how large it is physically. It's wide, it's long, and it's heavy, but it also races pretty well, and this is a track where I would expect this car to excel.
Yeah, and I think the other key to this car is it's nice and consistent and it's stable. So you can be really on edge with it, really aggressive with it, and of all the cars that are available in GTE, it's the most tame, I think. So a lot of times this is the car that drivers who are newer, maybe a little more, they need that more confidence in the simulator. And in the sim, you can't feel what's going on. So drivers tend to flock towards this car to get comfortable in GTE cars, and then maybe once they get some more experience, they might graduate away from it, but others just take to it and love it.
Mark Harris for Overtake Racing has that car P9. Screeching Moose Motorsports, maybe my favorite name here today, running 11th in a gorgeous-looking, very Canadian-inspired livery for that number 22 Corvette C8R. Makina Dean in it right now, running P11. And right behind them, Coda Racing, the 888 with Chris Cram behind the wheel, another one of those Corvette C8Rs. NSS Cookie Jar with Daniel Salmon sitting in pit lane right now, and that car behind the wall is also a C8R. So a trio of those cars right now from 11th down to 13th. Then it's 613 Racing and Antoine Dukasha in the number 11 Porsche. MC Motorsports with Christopher Cook. Curtis James in just here for SR, another Corvette C8R. Event Matrix, another great name in one of those M8s, another representation of the BMW platform here, and that's a great looking livery as well.
Certainly is, but back up at the top, a team just leapt up to second place. That's SPI Racing, currently being driven by Gavin Sanders and teamed with Justin DiBenedetto. A couple of names I actually recognize from knowing some real-world racing. Both of them, it looks like, have experience in the Nissan Sentra Cup and the PSC Canada Series. So that's really cool to see a couple of drivers with real-world experience, and they just leapt up to second on the board, tipping as I mentioned, that VRS Satellite Racing Blue nips them by 9,000ths of a second, so things getting hot here in the latter stages of qualifying. Grid Life still on top, but VRS Blue and SPI Racing have both leapfrogged all of the Apex V2R teams.
And look, actually, it's really interesting you bring up the Apex V2R teams because look where they are, 4th, 5th, and 6th, 880, 881, and 882, all three of them stacked together. And I think, is that all of them? Yes, it is. So all three of those teams running right within about 0.2 of a second of each other. That's pretty impressive. That's consistency, Tom. And if you're looking at this not from just a driver standpoint, from a team standpoint, they're doing pretty well already.
It is, and everybody in that top 6 is separated by, as near as makes no difference, a half a second. A little over half a second out to Grid Life, but everybody else is really, really right there. And that's what I think we're in for a really good race. And I love these GTE cars because even when you see them in real world series like the European Le Mans Series, which is now World Endurance Championship, and the IMSA Series here in the United States, these cars just race so well. They're always so well balanced, and things never really spread out all that much.
And these cars are fantastic too, and unfortunately in the WeatherTech Championship in the real world, this class will be going away for 2022. But these cars have between 500 and 600 horsepower, and they have really intense aerodynamics, and they're also no traction control, traction control, but no ABS. So got to watch those brake lockups. And you're looking at Road America as a track that has very long straights leading to some pretty slow corners. That means that you've got to make sure that you've got your braking sorted out, especially with your brake bias, Tom, between your front and the rear of your car.
And you may even see those drivers play with the brake bias throughout the stints. If you start to feel the car understeering, you dial the brake bias back. We have front engine and rear engine cars, or mid-engine and rear engine cars, all three in this with fuel tanks in different places. So there's a lot of adjustability, and the setups are completely open. A lot of times getting a setup dialed is even more of a challenge than driving them.
I imagine that the tracks we're going to visit this season, dialing the setup for each one of those is going to be a challenge. And in a series that's this competitive, I think spending the amount of time that you need to make sure that all your drivers are comfortable is also important. Have a look at the timing and scoring here, Tom. With 4 minutes and 40 seconds left, 3rd through 10th, all the 911 RSR.
And a couple more movers. MC Motorsports in the 66 car, another 911 RSR, they just moved up to 5th, splitting the Apex V2R groups that had run 4th through 6th. VRS Blue in the Corvette, they were sitting in 2nd place, but have now gone under 2 minutes. Grid Life Red, White, and Blue had been the only car under 2 minutes until just now. That Corvette is now there by about 600ths of a second, so things are really, really tightening up at the top. And I have to wonder if this is just kind of down to the roulette of where you're drafting and where you're getting that lap coming from.
An open qualifying here, so the ability to draft off of other cars is available here. Our next event will take place on March 14th at Sebring International Raceway. Very bumpy out there. Then the Nürburgring on April 11th. Watkins Glen on the 16th of May. And then the final race of the season on June 20th is TBD, will be voted on by the drivers after Watkins Glen. So a little bit of chaos towards the end of the season. Probably a track that most of the drivers will want to go to, but not set in stone just yet. So, Grid Life, VRS Satellite Blue, SPI Racing up in 3rd, Gavin Sanders. And this team, I believe that both of these drivers actually made an appearance in the Porsche Canada Series in the either the 911 GT3 Cup or the Cayman GT4. So again, these drivers also very talented. Some of the top Canadian sim racers in Canada. Coda Racing in pit lane in the 888 car. Looks like they're done qualifying for this session. Ecto Esports. This team, I believe that these drivers are 15 and 16 years old, and one of them isn't even eligible to win the prize. You are eligible as long as you turn 16 by the time that prize rolls around. But that's Matthew Masonov. I'm going to get corrected on the names. I'm sorry. We'll get there. Tom's laughing at me.
I'm laughing because we commentate 2 Canadian series now, and the French-Canadian names always throw silly Americans off, Kyle and I, here in the booth. But we do our best, and we would love to know if we're saying it wrong. We'll fix it, we promise. But, yeah, I think Matthew Masonov and Zachary Charbonneau, they're going to be fun to watch. A couple of teenagers, and you do have to be 16 to win the prize, so we can cross our fingers that Matthew turns that age by, what, June 20th?
June 20th. Yep, it'll be the last race of the season out there. Average J Racing. James Liebrecht right now in the Ferrari, the other Ferrari. They are bookending the field right now. Team RSC Race Sim Canada has not put in a qualifying lap, but 21st right now is Average J Racing, all the way at the bottom of the order. The other Ferrari all the way at the top of the order. So massive split. And we were talking with DJ Alessandrini before he joined the series, and he was trying to figure out which car was the fastest. Tom, is that ever a black and white answer?
Well, the tricky part is you have to consider the season, not just the race. So they chose the Ferrari based on this race being at Road America, knowing that the Ferrari has a good record at Road America. But if you look at the calendar, we've got Sebring, we've got the Nürburgring GP, we've got Watkins Glen, and then one you don't even know yet. So they might still succeed well here today. As we say that, SPI Racing goes to pole at a 2 minutes .87, so they just got nipped at pole. But either way, maybe the Ferrari's great here, but maybe it's only great here, where the rest of the season you have to take into consideration.
Now, they might have the luxury of not going for the prize and not going for points in that regard. So they might switch cars every round. I don't think there's any rule against that, but you're not going to earn points for doing that.
There is a rule. You cannot change cars.
Okay. So they are locked into the Ferrari. Tom, I'm amazed. You read the rule book like 3 minutes before we went live, and you somehow knew that. So that was pretty impressive.
Racing nerd. I want to know the rules. Got to know them.
Got to know them so you can get right to the edge of them and not quite break them, right?
So it was a Ferrari and a Corvette on the front row. Now it is a Porsche up at the front. And if you look down the list of makes, it's a lot of Porsches. And talking about fan votes, I wonder if just the last track might favor the Porsche because there's a ton of teams racing that Porsche. Who knows?
Overtake Racing, Mark Harris in the number 12. In 11th right now, the first of those BMWs. I thought I had seen more BMWs on the entry list. Oh, there they are. They're towards the bottom. Event Matrix LSM team in 19th, and then Night Blind Racing running the other 3 M8s in this field. 20 seconds left here in qualifying. SPI Racing with Gavin Sanders nips the pole away from Grid Life RWB. VRS Satellite Racing Blue with Adam Crane and the C8R in 3rd. So 3 of the 5 manufacturers in this field are represented in the top 3. Then it's all 911 screaming straight 6s all the way down to the bottom of the top 10. Then Overtake Racing 11th, a trio of Corvettes, another Porsche rounding out the top 15 here in the field. It will be a 2 minutes, .87 second lap that gets pole here for the first round of the 2021 Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series presented by Apex V2R and Shannonville Motorsport Park. So with that said and done, Tom, a little bit of keys to the race here. First one, patience. It's a 2-hour race. You can't win it in the first corner. You certainly can lose it.
It's not that long of an endurance race, but it is endurance nonetheless. So you got to be consistent, and you have to be able to pick your battles here because 2 hours is a long time. In my opinion, the race doesn't really start until those pit stops are done.
Then driver changes. You've got a 20-minute window between minutes 50 and 70 to make your swap. How are you going to do it? Where you are on the racetrack, where traffic is, are going to be huge considerations when you make that change.
And, of course, in the real world, you have to consider doing up your belts, getting in and out of the car, all that stuff. But here in the simulator, you have a driver that hasn't driven the car for 70 minutes, and they've got to jump into the car cold on their computer. And whoever can get up to speed quickest and readapt to the car after that little pit stop is really going to be a big switch. And we may see teams do well in the first stint and fall off. We may see teams that come out of nowhere on that second stint.
Then make and model. We already talked about this extensively, but which car, which team is going to come out on top, and will the car be the difference? I'm curious to see if we'll have an all Porsche top 5 or top 10, or if we'll see the BMWs move forward. Make and model, the choice of car is going to matter. We'll see how much it will at the end of this 2-hour endurance race. So in just a moment, we'll switch on over to the race and bring you the first round of the 2021 Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series. On Sim TV, post-race, we'll talk to a couple of the teams, the podium finishers. We'll also talk to some teams during the race, which is something we've never really had the luxury of being able to do. So make sure you stick around for this one for that. And then right after the conclusion of this race at 7:15 Eastern will be the next round, round number 4 of the 2021 Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series from Texas. Word salad today here, Tom. I'm struggling. It's a Sunday.
It is a Sunday.
It's going to be a long one, too. All right, we're stuck in a 10x10 room for 5 hours, so hope you're ready.
Good to go.
He's ready to go.
Let's go racing.
Got a glass of water, and we're ready to go racing here from Road America. They call this the National Park of Speed, of course, the National Park of Speed for the United States. But probably Canadian racetracks underrepresented maybe in iRacing. We've got Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, and we also have Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, but not a lot of other racetracks up there. I'd like to see some more.
And I'm surprised with the calendar. There's no Canadian racetracks. If we have 2 in 5 rounds, there's none on there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that June 20th finale be at either CTMP or at Gilles Villeneuve. But either way, a wide variety of tracks on tap here. The other thing I just noticed, we have an incident count limit installed on this server every 5x with a DQ at 20x, which is insanely low for a 2-hour race. I don't know if that is correct or not, but we should explain what those incident points are if you're tuning in and don't know iRacing.
Yeah, so the incident limit basically means that if you have more than half of your car off of the racetrack, or you make contact with a wall or a competitor, or if you spin the car out, you earn points. Now, this is like golf. You don't want points, Tom. If you go off track, it's 1x. You spin, it's 2x. You hit something or someone, that's a 4x. Now, if you get above 20 in this server or this race, you're done. If you get every 5 incidents, you're going to have to hit pit lane. That means that if you're getting a 1x and then you hit somebody, pit road. Penalty.
Now that is not in the rule book, but there is a live steward in the server. That is in the rule book. So there's the live steward could potentially be controlling that. That might actually not really be a factor. It's just something I noticed. Maybe it was a mistake bringing it up, but I know there is a live steward in this race. So I'll be keeping tabs on race control to keep track of whether or not we have teams getting penalties, and perhaps those incident points that we just talked about are not really a major factor.
We will see. About 60 laps estimated here on our timing and scoring. Thanks for joining us for the first round of the series from Road America. Let's roll through our starting drivers here, not teams. We'll roll through the drivers to begin. And on the front row tonight, it's going to be Justin DiBenedetto in the number 16 car. Alongside him for Grid Life RWB, DJ Alessandrini. Row number 2, Adam Crane in the number 18. Matt Corrins for Apex V2R 880 starts in 4th. Then Christopher Cook rolls off in 5th alongside the Nathan Block Machine. That is another one of those Apex V2R cars. 7th, Marc-Andre Seguin in the 882, and Giuliano Romagnolo in the number 5 in 8th for VRS Satellite Racing Red. Then Chris Jackson in 9th in the number 121. Timothy Salvatore starts in 10th in the number 6. Mark Harris 11th in the number 12 car. McKenna Dean in 12th in the 22 car. In 13th, it'll be Chris Cram in the 888 for Coda Racing in the Chevrolet Corvette C8R. Then Daniel Salmon in 14th in the number 75. Antoine Takache in the number 11. Curtis James in the 16th spot in the number 87. In 17th, Jeff McCaig in the 15 car. Zachary Charbonneau in the 13 car starts 18th. Then Steven Barkovich in 19th and Douglas Doucette in 20th. Last couple drivers, Joe Ferguson in 21st and Matt Jensen did not take the grid, but he would have started 22nd. So the field rolling onto the back straightaway here, Tom. One long pace lap to get your tires and brakes up to temperature. How important is that in a 2-hour race? Are you good just hanging out for a little while?
I think you want to get them a little bit up to temperature. You don't want to have the car be a handful going down into turn 1, but I think there's 2 factors here. Everyone knows it's a 2-hour race, but also there was a minimum experience limit that you had to have to enter this series. All of these drivers have experienced iRacing a lot. We'll just put it that way without explaining how it worked. And everybody is smart enough to know that coming into a 2-hour race, you need to be a little bit calm at the green flag. So I would not be surprised to see things string out a little bit, and you'll see people be a little bit calm coming down into turn 1. Again, things will start to crank up, and be really, really hot at the end of 2 hours.
Well, let's talk about really hot at the end of 2 hours. How about the track temp hot right now? 110 degrees Fahrenheit. That is toasty, and it's probably only going to get worse.
It will. It will continue to get hotter. Anything above 80 degrees here in iRacing is slippery. 110 is downright ice as far as pavement is concerned. So these drivers are definitely going to have to keep an eye on the cars losing control. Again, no ABS. We're going to see maybe some brake lockups, but they do have traction control. It's not the kind of traction control you want to rely on, though.
Yeah, you're going to want to make sure that you're not getting into that too much. I don't think that'll be a huge concern because the corners here aren't necessarily slow enough where you're going to be leaning on it a ton like you would at the hairpins at Daytona, for example. But I do think in some of the faster corners, it might save you if you get a little bit sideways. It might just correct the car and keep it straight enough. Rolling through the carousel now. This is a very, very high-speed area. Pretty much single groove here, Tom, but you can play around with the line you're running to make sure you maximize that exit on the run down to the kink. And this is the corner that everyone talks about when you come to Road America.
It is. And these cars are fast, but they make a lot of downforce too, so this may not be a massively scary corner in these cars, but it is critical because it opens up to the second part of that back straightaway, if you want to call it that, and that is a passing zone down in the Canada corner. So this exit on the kink is really, really important because it can make or break whether or not you can make a pass or defend a pass into the following corner.
If you run off track there, you better say your prayers because it's hard to pull that car back on track without ending up in the fence. And it's concrete and Armco. Feels like a mile all the way down to Canada Corner, which I think is the most beautiful corner in all of racing in North America. But you don't really get a lot of time to experience it. You're in and out here pretty quick. And then you're up the hill through turns 13 and into turn 14 to round out the rest of the lap. So it goes by fast enough, but a 2-minute lap isn't a short one per se, so there's a lot of opportunity to make mistakes in this race. Up front, though, Justin DiBenedetto for SPI Racing in that on a Salmon, the Pink Pig Porsche 911 RSR. alongside Grid Life RWB with DJ Alessandrini behind the wheel. 2 hours of racing for the Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series presented by Apex V2R and Shannonville Motorsport Park. Time to go racing. Porsche's flat six is screaming only at idle right now as we climb up the hill for Road America. About 60 laps worth of time as we get ready to go racing. 21 teams going for victory, going for a chance to climb behind the wheel of a real race car. Green flag flies, 2 hours on the board, and we're racing from Road America.
Really strung out there. Look at Alessandrini makes an aggressive move to the outside after tucking in to protect second place. He's got to run up the outside, but breaks early. Smart move and tucks back in. It's still going to be De Benedetto at the front, but Alessandrini with the over-under on the exit tries to show the nose of the Ferrari up the inside and gets the line going into 3.
Down into turn number 3, the Porsche on the outside, Ferrari on the inside. Bit of a break light there for a moment, but it's going to be a drag race all the way down the back straightaway here towards turn number 5, and VRS Satellite Blue with Adam Crane behind the wheel, watching and hoping that these two tangle early in the going. On the brakes, Alessandrini pulls out in front. Bit of shuffling farther in the field, but I think everybody's made it through turn 5 okay. Couple cars running a little bit wide onto the rumble strips, but Grid Life RWB out front now. Benedetto falls into second.
Ooh, big tank slap from one of the BMWs in the background, but they're still clean. All 22 cars, all 21 that took the green, I should say, are still clean and clear, mostly single file. And it is a Ferrari Porsche. Now a lunge up the inside, one of the Apex V2R Porsches defending. No, getting passed by VRS Red.
That is Romagnolo going on the defense for the 882, driven by Marc-Andre Seguin. Through the carousel now. Twin cars here in the 5 and 882. And now VRS Satellite Racing Blue under attack from Matt Corrence in the other Apex V2R car, the 880. Speed's climbing well over 160 miles an hour on the brakes now. All line astern here. Corrence has a look to the inside, but Adam Crane doesn't fall for it. Can't fall for that early here, Tom. Car gets out of your mirror. You just got to hope and pray that he doesn't get alongside.
It looks like the Corvette comes into its own down here into Canada corner. Look at it pull away from the Porsche just a little bit. I don't know if that's because of the move that Corrence made, but the V2R Porsche falls off the back just a little bit, and the Corvette is pulling back towards our top 2 leaders.
Coming up over the crest to complete the first of 60 laps here, potentially across the line. Alessandrini leads everyone, weaving like Indy cars at Indianapolis, trying to break that draft. There's a BMW that's out of line, that's Overtake Racing in the number 12. Here comes on the outside, RSC's C team, Timothy Salvatore.
It's better of it, tucks back in. So the BMW looks to be holding this field up just a little bit there, just outside of the top 10. He's moved up 2 positions, though, a 9th from 11th on the grid for the Overtake Racing driver, Harris. But has lost touch with the rest of the top 8 in making those moves, and he's got a mirror full of a whole lot of GTE cars.
Here's Chris Jackson in the Never Quit Racing car. This is one of those Porsches. Right behind, Timothy Salvatore on the run down at turn number 5, and the slipstream pulls out a line. On the brakes a little bit later. Heard him lift and coast for a little bit just to see if they could dare Salvatore into braking deeper, and he did alongside.
Well, that's one thing to talk about with race strategy as they go side by side up to turn 6. You can save some fuel by lifting and coasting and making some smart choices around here. And with the fixed window, you might be able to delay the amount of time you sit still on pit lane by saving some of that fuel. So I do think it's a good call. Once you're in line and kind of happy with your track position, saving fuel means your pit stop is shorter, and every time you save time on the pit lane, you come out ahead.
Bit of dust flying at the exit at turn number 8, so those two Porsches still scrapping for a spot. VRS Satellite Racing Red with Giuliano Romagnolo and the Apex V2R 882 still running them down. These two cars look pretty even right now. They're losing ground to the MC Motorsports yellow Porsche up the road, though. So maybe battling this early isn't a great strategy.
No, I think things are settling down. The top 4 breaking away for sure, and then it's a pair as we have more movement in the top 3. The SPI Racing Porsche dropping a position to the Corvette of VRS Blue, and now Apex V2R 880 is alongside the outside of turn 13, and a lift for SPI to let that happen. Tries to make the drama not hurt him too much, but he's still losing positions. What is going on with the SPI car?
Yeah, De Benedetto's losing ground very, very quickly as he comes out of turn 14. He's losing another one here to the MC Motorsports car. Christopher Cook behind the wheel of that. And could have gotten a slowdown by cutting the track maybe in Canada corner there, Tom, but it just looked like he got out of line and just couldn't figure out how to get it back online without causing himself problems. So he lost 3 or 4 spots now, 4 because he started on pole.
Yeah, he went from second to almost sixth on that lap, but finally protects the position from MC Motorsports. Christopher Cook couldn't quite make the pass in that yellow Porsche, but that's really shifted the shape of this race. The leader, Allison Drini, is gone. VRS Blue and Apex V2R with Crane and Corrins are kind of paired up, and now the battle for 4th to 9th really is kind of in a train.
Poor Porsche screaming by the camera there on the back straightaway. And VRS Satellite Racing Red with Roman Yolo. Closing in on Christopher Cook. Big lunge up the inside. Can he get the car woed down? He does. That was a heck of a pass. Held up Cook a little bit on exit there, Tom, but he made it stick.
That's an impressive move from Roman Yolo, and no brake lockup either, so no drama. The 5 car is through, and now Apex V2R 880 is dropping a number of spots. But look at this move. Not even really a run on him, and just dove in there late. I don't know if that was a mistake, well managed, or if that was a calculated move, but either way, tip of the hat.
Looked like it was a little bit of a mistake. NSS Cookie Jar with Daniel Salmon has had a bit of a spin. Let's go back and see what caused. Oh, he just ran wide in turn number 6. Ran just straight off the track and got a bit of the tire barrier there, Tom. That was weird.
These GTE cars are sturdy, so that's not really the end of the world there. He's going to be able to get the thing repaired maybe a little bit on that pit stop as well, but he's lost touch with the field, and with a little bit of body damage, you lose some straight line speed, and Daniel Salmon's in for a long, long next 40 or so minutes.
Nathan Block of the Apex V2R 881 car has a huge train forming behind him here. All Porsches. Love the sound of this Porsche Flat 6. This is my favorite generation of this race car. This will be a classic a decade or two from now. Night Blind Racing, trouble in Canada corner for their BMW M8. Come on down all by themselves. Got in too hot, blocked up that right front tire, and just drove straight off into the gravel. Same thing we saw in turn 6 with the NSS Cookie Jar car with Salmon.
Yeah, coming up on 10 minutes into the race, and things as they settle down. A couple of mistakes started to show, but a move for 4th place. SPI Racing takes the position back. De Benedetto goes around Nathan Block, but Block tries to respond with a little bit of a run. And this is classic GTE. You think 2-hour race, settle into a pace. No, they're going to race like this the entire time because things are just so tight. Obviously here we're kind of spec Porsche, but even other cars, they just race so well.
This is looking so much like what I remember watching at the height of GTE and GTLM and IMSA. These cars would just run nose to tail like this for hours on end. Car out of line, that's Nathan Block on the binders. Oh, sorry, that was the Satellite Racing red car, Roman Yolo on the brakes. He's been really gutsy into turn 5 there, Tom. He might have that car set up with a little bit more rear brake, and you could put a lot of rear brake into this car because of all the weight over the back tires.
And I think that was a pass on the MC Motorsports Christopher Cook. If I'm not mistaken, that car just picked up a position.
I think you're right. Yes.
So he's currently climbing in that number 5 car. Roman Yolo is looking really strong and really brave right now. You just got to keep your wits about you. Now that SPI Racing has picked up the spot, the pink Porsche of Justin De Benedetto, he's starting to drive away just a little bit from Nathan Block.
There's your race leader, Grid Life RGWB with DJ Alessandrini behind the wheel, then Adam Crane trying to run him down. Last lap by, they were a little bit slow.
Look who's joined this battle. That BMW is at the back of the line. All that bickering amongst the Porsches and overtake racing. Mark Harris has pulled up to within drafting distance of that 5-pack of Porsches to make it a 6-way battle there for 4th. And I have been paying attention. I think that BMW is really good in a straight line. I watched him pull away from another car from turn 3 to turn 5. So we'll keep an eye on this number 12 car. Maybe he can continue to draft up and make himself a bit of a nuisance for everybody else in that battle.
Well, let's have a look here. Miles per hour on the bottom right of your screen. We'll see if he can eclipse 165, maybe climb into the 170s here on this front straightaway. He's going to have some slipstreams. This is going to be maybe a little bit misleading, Tom, but he is still pretty far back, 7/10. 66 MC Motorsports car out of line, going defensive in the braking zone. But you see that M8 does gain on the straightaway, although these two in front of him are definitely still bickering.
I think the M8's also in a nice position where it's front engine and rear wheel drive. You're going to use all the tires pretty evenly. I think that M8 might be my pick for a good strong run car. I wish I'd have been able to drive them all and figure it out for myself, been away from my simulator, but I know that from other experience, a car that is easiest on all of its tires or equally hard on all of its tires maybe is predictable over a longer run more so than other cars.
Justin De Benedetto was real hot in qualifying, went quickest, but has not been quite up to the pace of the drivers in front since the drop of the green flag. Last lap by was nearly a second slower than the race leader right now.
Race leader is the only car on the track that did a 201 last time. Oh no, I lied. A couple of cars did 201s. last time through, but Allison Drini still controlling the pace of this race, and he's handing it over to Austin Cobb, who is actually a huge fan of this Porsche, so even more surprised to see that team in the Ferrari.
Event Matrix down into turn number 5, had the 75 car on the inside. They just ran wide again. And while all this was going on, I saw one of the cars. I thought it was the VRS satellite car. Let's go back a little farther. Watch this at the exit at turn number 7 here, Tom.
Massive
man.
bump on the left after that curb there, and it's certainly scary. You got to just stay calm and keep your hands straight. De Benedetto doing a good job. Romagnolo doing a good job keeping his hands straight and not losing it, but he's still quick and feeling like he wants the position away from Nathan Block. Look at the headlights blinking on the 5.
That's just an annoyance more than it is anything. No real reason to use the headlight flashes here. We're just running single class, but just a little heads up, I'm here. And after a while, it can probably get aggravating. If you can get the driver in front of you hot, it might make a mistake.
It's the best way to tell someone that you're going to try it if you get the opportunity. And pulls about equidistant between these 3. It looks like the top 3 cars are a little bit quicker in this battle. The SPI Apex V2R 881 and the VRS Red cars that are the top 3 there. And then a little bit of a gap forming to the MC Motorsports, the yellow of Chris Cook. And as things have settled down, it looks like the momentum of the number 12 Overtake Racing car slowed a little bit too.
Coda Racing with Chris Cram just got by Antoine Takasha in the 613 Racing Porsche. That was for 13th position. And up at the front, it does look like the lead that Alessandrini had gotten to has started to sort of even out at 1.9 seconds. And the last time by, Adam Crane was just about a 10th quicker. So I don't think this is totally done yet. We still got a long way to go, an hour and 49 minutes. There's that C8R. Now the other thing to consider is fuel consumption. The differences in these cars are minor, but you could probably use them to your advantage to run an extra lap or have to pit a lap earlier. That could change the face of this race just a little bit. Side-by-side Porsches for 5th.
It's no surprise it's the 5 of Romagnolo making a move again, trying to pick up more positions and does so. Goes through on Apex R 881 and he gets hung out to dry. Super tight between MC Motorsports and 881 Apex V2R. Nathan Block finally closes the door on Christopher Cook, but Cook was right there. Couldn't quite get the pass complete. Gets blocked on the way into the kink.
Yeah, that was a little awkward entry for him. He also might have been dealing with a little bit of aero wash following those front cars. All the downforce gone following that closely in behind. They'll punch a pretty big hole in the air. Here comes Marc-Andre Seguin to the 882 to the outside for position.
Seguin trying to pick up the spot. Gets it done pretty easily, and now Overtake Racing is back in the hunt, but the big winner in all that is SPI, Justin De Benedetto in the pink Porsche. Look how far out he is.
Trying to drive away. Christopher Cook struggling right now. He's driving through the mist, trying to hold on to these positions, but it's been shuffling a lot here so far in this battle from 4th down to, whoa, here we go, side by side again, down the front straight. MC Motorsports pulling even alongside.
Uses the slingshot. He's got the preferred line, but the outside into turn 1 is not a bad place to be. Tries it, but Cook takes the spot back. The thing with this is, yes, there's been a lot of shuffling, but every single shuffle has been prompted by Giuliano Romagnolo trying to get aggressive and picking up positions, and then everyone else has to deal with the aftermath of the ebb and flow as it continues side by side again out of turn 3.
This is spectacular stuff here. Porsches battling door to door. Here comes the German BMW to the outside, and now they're going to slipstream and push and shove. Co-opetition maybe here, Tom. But they are on the edge. You see how much the MC Motorsports car was on the brakes? Literally the rear end of the car sliding around on the binders because of how much he was on the edge.
It was, but again, look at the straight line speed on that BMW. He nearly motored both of the Porsches down that straightaway. He had a little bit of a run after they were going side by side, but that number 12 car, if it's consistent in the long run, it's easier to pass the one in a straight line than it is in a corner, and that car is fast in a straight line.
Spectacular racing. They've sorted it for now. Here goes NSS Cookie Jar Daniel Salmon going back by Steven Barkovich for LSM team. This is another one of those M8s. NSS Cookie Jar has been struggling a little bit with some of the slower corners. Turn 5 has really been their Achilles heel today. Going back up to Romagnolo, he's got Nathan Block trying to run him back down.
Again, Romagnolo just picked up that spot. It took him too long to really do it, though, as he lost a lot of time to Justin De Benedetto, who is in the pink car about 10 or 12 car lengths up the road. That's going to take a long time, and I do wonder if at this point, because things have gotten spread out, if Nathan Block will kind of concede the position and work with Romagnolo to get back up to De Benedetto, but maybe he just wants the spot back.
Yeah, work together? What's that?
I don't know. They don't seem to know what that is today.
Apparently not. Coda Racing and 613 Racing running nose to tail here. Corvette C8R versus 911 RSR. All the R's running 13th and 14th. Screeching Loose Motorsports. Makina Dean behind the wheel. They've been quiet today running in 12th, and they're now catching up to RSCC team with Timothy Salvatore and Chris Jackson for Never Quit Racing. That's a 3-car battle for 10th.
The lap times across the field starting to slow down just a bit, and the interesting thing with these cars is they're really fast at the green flag with their fresh tires, and they're really fast at the end of the run with no fuel in them, but in the middle they can get a little awkward, and things are finally simmering down. No one running a 201 that time through, but one of the fastest cars was the 5 of VRS Red. He's starting to pick up more speed, and looks like Nathan Block behind doesn't have any real opportunity to attack that position back, so keep an eye on this number 5 car.
On the brakes into turn number 5, nice and easy. We haven't seen a lot of drivers go off track yet. Remember how tight those incident limits are. So it's good to know that everyone's been keeping it on the black stuff for the most part so far. With Never Quit Racing with Chris Jackson and Timothy Salvatore, 10th and 11th right now, with Screeching Moose Motorsports right there for 11th.
Whoa, big slide for the Corvette up into turn 6. One of the other hardest corners on this track. I think Road America, there's a lot of corners, a lot of space, but the hard ones are 6 and 14 for me. Always feel like you get them a little bit wrong, and McKenna Dean almost goes around there at the top of 6, but gathers it back up, not losing a lot of time.
And into the carousel. This is all about balancing, and this is where you're going to find out how loose or how tight your setup is here, Tom. These long right-handers, if your car's loose, you're going to feel it. If it's tight, you're going to be screaming to loosen that car up a little bit on a pit stop. And
that Corvette looked pretty tight as it came through the center of the carousel, washing almost out to the outside lane. Continue to lose a little bit of time to the RSCC team in front. Never Quit Racing leading this pack, but spreading out just a bit.
Up the road a little bit, Apex V2R 882 and MC Motorsports 7th and 8th. A little bit less ragged the last couple laps now that they're sorted out single file, but that could reignite at any moment here if someone makes a mistake.
Gonna watch lap times this time through. Giuliano Romagnolo has completely dusted Nathan Block. Their gap is huge between the two, and I don't know if it's because 5 is fast or because the 881 is slow. Maybe a little bit of both. The 5 car, one of the fastest last time across the board. Really, really quick. Sets a personal fastest lap time. He is still slower than the top 5 or top 4 in front of him, though. But Nathan Block had a rough go of it last time through.
Yeah, about a second and a half off the pace of the driver right in front of him, so definitely not going the right direction in terms of pace. Out in front, though, keeping an eye on these front two with Grid Life RWB. Last time by was a 202.139, and for VRS Satellite Blue with Adam Crane, 202.125. So a hair quicker. That gap has gotten up a little bit, then stabilizes, goes up a little bit and stabilizes, but it hasn't completely exploded for DJ yet, though. So I don't think it's going to be a complete blowout, especially not this early in this race.
No, and again, with the driver change, it may come down to who is the stronger driver of these teams and who can get up to speed quicker. With Alessandrini and Cobb, they're in the Ferrari, and then in the VRS Red team, it's Alex Ellis and Giuliano Roman. No, that's the wrong car. VRS Blue, I'm sorry. That's Adam Crane and Maxime Detilly. So it may come down to whether Detilly or Cobb get up to speed faster or are faster than their teammates.
Trouble for RSC's C team. There's some big left side damage on that car for Timothy Salvatore. And I think he just went off at the high speed turn number 7, runs wide out off the curb, gets loose and slides and slams into the concrete there. That is a big hit. Not something you want to see this early in the race here, Tom, but that's a tricky corner. Catches the grass and the car just steps out, and that's going to hurt that car, I think, pretty good. He lifted. He knew he was in trouble. Got hit pretty hard. That might hurt that suspension. Meanwhile, how about Nathan Block and Christopher Cook going back at it again? Right back to the ragged edge, and some damage to the left rear of that Porsche, the 881. Whoa, big move to the driver's right side of the racetrack. Almost ran into the fence down the front straight. A huge run. Not quite in position across the line, but he's going to have the preferred line going into turn 1.
I almost think the 66 of Christopher Cook has a little bit less downforce on it because he's getting these massive slingshots, but the car looks so ragged. A big hip check to the door of Marc-Andre Seguin leaving turn 1, and that gives Giuliano Romagnolo a little bit more space. No, I'm sorry. That was Block that almost got the hip check. These V2R cars have switched positions, and all of a sudden Block is the car trailing.
Yeah, there was a lot of shuffling there in that final trip around turn 14, but Christopher Cook just took that massive run and did something with it, crowding a little bit on entry and on exit, but he made the pass happen. Here comes Block back up the inside, but not close enough. Overtake Racing with Mark Harris ready to pounce if they make a mistake.
Yeah, so the order shifted a little bit. Marc-Andre Seguin is the car up the road just a little bit, and then the yellow of Christopher Cook. Nathan Block has kind of fallen a couple of more positions after starting, I think, at 6th.
Oh, trouble. That's to Benedetto. Spun. Pole sitter around at turn number 8. He's off track and pulls right back on at the exit. Big mistake, though, for a pole sitting driver. It's been a troublesome day for him.
He was all by himself. Looks like he's on the ragged edge, chasing the car all the way down the hurry downs, and then is probably going to lock. Oh, grab grass. He had not quite salvaged it after going off at turn 7. Didn't get back to the line he wanted to be on and spun himself in the grass.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see is he's moved back to driver's right here and just watch the edge of that racetrack get a little bit closer. He just missed the start of the curb by 10 feet and looped the car around.
Costly small mistake, but now it's going to be a long race for the 16 car. SPI Racing having started on pole. It's not over. They've still got an hour and 40 minutes left. We've been doing this for 20 minutes. Can you believe that? With all the action we've seen. But the SPI team with Gavin Sanders, Justin DiBenedetto, Gavin Sanders is going to have a hill to climb as well.
Lots of position shuffling, plenty of action. There's no shortage of that so far today in this race. And now you're saying endurance racing, oh, it's typically a little bit less intense. You get some time to relax. Not so far today. Everyone's been on the edge since the drop of the green flag. Now a little bit of separation amongst these groups. But DiBenedetto, while he didn't have the pace of some of the other front runners, he is quicker than the drivers that he is now behind. So I imagine he'll start to charge back through this field. No damage accumulated on that car other than maybe some tire temperature. So he should be able to come back through at least 8th, 7th, and 6th.
He was lucky that he was kind of clinging more to the top 4 than he was everybody else. So he's still within touch of basically where he was, or maybe 5th, but he's got a lot of work to do and a number of cars to pass to get there. We've seen that Seguin, Cook, Block, and Harris are not afraid to crash. Or, sorry, not afraid to race. I don't know why
not afraid to crash.
Not afraid to race.
They're not afraid to wad their car up. They're going to go out there, checkers or wreckers, bring me the checker flag and the steering wheel. Yeehaw! There's Never Quit Racing with Chris Jackson and Screeching Moose Motorsports. And thanks to Tom for Googling the pronunciation of Seguin in the background. I appreciate that. So
we can always blame Google now if we're saying it wrong.
I love the livery on this Porsche. Is there some damage to that front splitter, or is that just the way the car's painted? It looks like it's got a bit of a ripple in the front splitter area here, Tom. I'm not sure if that was
hard
there.
To say.
The way that it runs, that's not going to help. Driving through the gravel. And we'll give up a spot to Coda Racing. Chris Cram in the 888 car started 13th up to 11th for Coda Racing. And continuing his climb. That C8R is so quiet in comparison to the RSR. Can't hear it.
It is funny. This whole class is basically a bunch of quiet V8s, quiet turbo V8s, and then the scream of that Porsche. So even if there was only one Porsche, it's still the only car you'd hear.
Probably. I remember back watching IMSA qualifying a couple of years ago at Watkins Glen. They'd go up all the way into the boot. You'd be sitting down in turn 1, and you'd just hear it echoing through the hills. Such a cool car. And as I was saying earlier, this generation of the RSR is going to be an instant classic. When we look back, it'll be like we look at the 787B and cars like that. So really, really neat car. Christopher Cook in the number 66 has Nathan Block behind him. At some point, I'd like to get him in here to chat, or his teammate in here to chat just a little bit to see how their day has gone so far from the team perspective. And 2.3 seconds is the lead for DJ Alessandrini, and it has not grown.
It's not really moving much, but every time I look at it, they're within 100th or maybe even a 10th of a second. These two are basically the pinnacle of consistency right now, and so quick too. They're back in the 201s, and these cars are going to start to get quicker and quicker from now on as they've kind of gone through that awkward phase of a little too much fuel but not quite enough tire to go really fast. And Adam Crane has also been super impressive. Both of these guys just running basically match lap times one after the other. I'm trying to pay attention to the gaps and see maybe where the strengths and weaknesses of the cars come and go. And I think it's Sector 2 where the Corvette is quick, and the Ferrari makes up for it in Sectors 1 and 3.
Car got the inside curb on the way into the kink there and almost stepped out on him. But what I've heard about this Corvette is that it's one of the more stable cars. Now, the Porsche and Ford, from my understanding, I've heard the Porsche can be a little bit deadly, but the Ford especially, the reason why we don't see it here today is because it is a car that you have to set up perfectly to drive, and when it's fast, it's also deadly. So it doesn't seem like it's a great option. That's not to say we couldn't see another team join later with the Ford, but I'm not expecting it. It's kind of the redheaded stepchild of the group, and probably won't see it around a whole lot this season. Deeper in the field, never quit racing, Chris Jackson has 6:13 racing behind him, 2 Porsches going for 12.
Last time through, just to finish that note on the leaders, Adam Crane took 2.5 tenths out of Alessandrini last time across. So perhaps maybe that Corvette set up to go a little bit faster on a later run, or maybe we're just seeing the experience here because, you know, we did mention the Grid Life RWB team was a fairly late entry for this championship, and you do have to wonder how much time they got to really put into that setup, or did they just kind of nab whatever they could and press go.
And back to 5th place, Apex V2R 882 with Marc-Andre Seguin. Got Christopher Cook right behind. This 66 MC Motorsports car, look at that, last time by, another personal best, and closing in again. I'm looking down the order to see if there's more drivers that are doing just that. Overtake Racing with Mark Harris did that a lap ago as well. So did Coda Racing. These cars really are picking up their pace, and significantly. NSS Cookie Jar just did the same, as did Average J Racing. So a bunch of purple laps for the majority of the field here.
And the other thing I'm curious to know is whether or not any of these teams will consider a double stint on the tires. You do save a lot of time on the pit lane by not changing the tires on these cars. And I know from endurance racing in longer races, we're talking maybe 6, 8, 10, even 24-hour races like Daytona, teams were comfortable double and triple stinting tires on these GTE cars. The hard part is your teammate then has to get in on used tires. You might save 28 to 35 seconds depending on the pit stop, but then you're obviously at a disadvantage on these tires. So there's another strategy point that we have to start to consider as that pit window opens in about 20 minutes.
166 miles an hour off into Canada Corner. Tom, you've driven here before. What was the max you ever did into Canada Corner? 150?
Well, in
the ZR1?
Yeah, about 160 in a ZR1. But
that's insane.
In a race car, not nearly that fast. And these cars can break a heck of a lot later than the street ZR1 can.
We've got Scott McGuire here from MC Motorsports. That car running P6 right now. And Scott, so far, it's been a bit wild out there. That team has been scrapping with the Apex V2R cars. Your thoughts so far in the race, and how nervous were you with those opening moments?
I have to be honest, like the first couple laps are always a bit nerve-wracking. There was one point where there's a bit of a close call between the Apex VR2 drivers, but other than that, I see it's going pretty well so far.
Well, let's talk about strategy a little bit. You got a 20-minute window to come down pit lane and take fuel and potentially tires. What's the stint setup look like for you? Are you kind of aiming to make your driver change when you're taking tires, and how often are you going to take fresh Michelins on these cars?
So far we are looking to pit around the 1 hour, 2 minute mark. So our plan is to take a full load of fuel then. Also change drivers and tires at the same time, then hopefully we can make it to the end from there.
And we see a field almost completely full of Porsches. It seems like that's kind of the popular car choice. Do you think that that's an advantage this week and a disadvantage others, or tell me about the car lineup and how you feel like you're going to do at some of the other tracks on the schedule this season?
I know that from past experience racing in other races on iRacing, the Porsche tends to be a little bit slower on the long straights, but it's faster in the corners. So I guess I have to turn out because I think that Road America does have a good balance of long straights and fast corners.
Well, Scott, the best of luck to you. We'll talk to you a little bit later today and talk to your teammate as well. But so far, so good for the MC Motorsports car. Good luck.
Great, thank you.
Up front, 2.7 second gap. And looks like a lot of the field has started to even out, but the closest battle, funny enough, is the MC Motorsports car right behind Marc-Andre Seguin as they climb the hill under the front straightaway.
This is interesting also that the other cars that we thought might compress this battle back down, Nathan Block and Justin DiBenedetto, have kind of stabilized where they were as well. Remember, De Benedetto was the pole sitter and had been running up in fourth. He's the pink Porsche way there in the background and doesn't seem to have made much gap up on the Overtake Racing BMW in front, let alone the rest of the Porsches in front of that. So maybe this car is stabilized, or maybe a little bit shaken is the driver inside that pink Porsche.
Yeah, not going the right direction, and they're on pace, but not enough to actually climb anywhere just yet. So they definitely have to pick up the pace. Maybe that driver swap will make that happen. Christopher Cook dogging the back of Seguin down into turn number 5. But look how good Marc-Andre is into turn number 5. Using all the racetrack on corner exit to accelerate that 911 RSR. One of the things these cars do really well is get up out of corners. That's just Porsches in general, Tom. They just squat and go.
They're always really good on the brakes too. Nice and point and shooty, I guess I would say. But the 66 car does seem, again, to be running a lot less downforce. Good down the straightaways between the kink and kind of the corner, and then the first and second straightaways on the track. But then loses some time here, as you can see. Marc-Andre Seguin pulling away once again in these longer corners, and corners that rely more on the downforce. The Apex V2R 882 seems to be much stronger than the 66 in those areas.
Deeper in the field, Daniel Salmon in the NSS Cookie Jar car. This car went off early and got himself into the tire barrier at the exit at turn 6. You see the right front fender crinkle just at the corner of the headlight, but it hasn't slowed their pace all that much, but they are being chased down by Average J Racing with Joe Ferguson in behind in that the other Ferrari 488 GTE that's in this field. The other one is driven by Alessandrini out front. A little bit of a scrape on that right front fender for Joe Ferguson, so he's also had an issue. Steven Barkovich is off in turn 8 here, Tom, M8. Back and see if we can find out what happened to him. Just got in too hot, got the car sideways, overcorrected, went through the gravel. Moderate hit there into the tires, but I'd rather hit that than concrete.
Maybe playing with the brake bias just a little bit, or maybe not playing with the brake bias, and maybe that's what got him after over half the stint gone. 1 hour and 28 minutes remaining, and again, that pit window opens up at 1 hour and 10 minutes on that timer in your upper left. So that is go time for me. That's when the race really gets interesting. What does the second driver have? And how did the pit stops look? Again, we didn't really consider the tire implications, but I do think that there will be teams that don't take tires, and I suspect there will be teams that do.
Just have to wonder how much of that would you shift the brake bias over the course of a run. I mean, obviously, for the Porsche, the fuel tank's all in the nose, so that's going to massively change how the car handles over the course of a run. For the other cars, mostly in the rear. So how does that change where you're pushing the bias over the course of a run in the Porsche versus some of the other cars?
It does. Yeah, it depends on the car. The Porsche, you're going to dial it back just a little bit more. You basically dial it to where the weight is. So you want to rely on the tires that naturally have that pressure. The Porsches dial it back. Maybe the BMW dial it forward. But if the BMW gets pushy, you can also dial it back and help it turn the car. The key is being flexible with it, and we're talking small percentage changes, maybe 0.2, 0.3% on that bias. It's really pretty touchy.
Going to have Zach Vanier join us here in just a moment. Let's see what team he is on here, Tom, if you could find that for me. Not currently on the racetrack, so he'll join us here in the booth in just a moment. And my understanding, he is the CTCC TCR champion, so he's got some racing history behind him as we hit lap number 16 here in this race. Cookie Jar and Average J Racing going for 16th spot for Apex V2R 881. That's the team driven by Nathan Block, and we'll see if we can get Zach in here in just a moment. He popped in for a second, but there he is. Hey, Zach, you got a copy?
I got a copy. You guys hear me?
I got you. Right now, we're watching a great battle for 16th, but a little while ago, we were watching a battle between your teammate, Nathan Block, and Christopher Cook in the 66 MC Motorsports car. It's been really racy in the opening laps of this race. 2-hour run. How much were you covering your eyes those first 15 laps or so?
Yeah, I've been watching the whole thing. Spotting Nathan, he's doing an excellent job so far. He's keeping the car in one piece and keeping us in a position where we can compete later on in the race. Like you said, it's a 2-hour race, so we're a little early now for battles and really fighting. But within the dying minutes of the race, Nathan's putting us in a good spot.
Well, you've got some racing experience in front-wheel drive race cars, but the mid-engine rear-wheel drive Porsche is a bit of an adjustment, perhaps. We've seen a pretty heavy concentration of Porsches in this series, and I was asking Christopher Cook's teammate about why they chose the Porsche. Why did you guys choose this car? Do you feel like it's an advantage here at Road America?
Yeah, it was definitely a team decision. to pick this car was one that we felt most comfortable with and one we figured we could compete with. So yeah, no, it's been a pleasure working with these guys and being a part of this event, and looking forward to it.
Well, of course, there's prizes on the end of the season for the team that, or for one team that gets drawn out of a drawing at the end of the year. We don't have our final round yet set in stone. Of the racetracks that we could race at, which one would you like to have as the final round of the season?
That's a tough question. You know, I feel fairly comfortable. I've got quite a bit of experience underneath my belt, so I feel like whatever track we end up competing at, I think Nathan and myself will definitely be there contending and put a good run on for the people watching, the viewers.
Well, Zach, good luck to you. We'll talk to you a little bit later and potentially your teammate a bit later in the day here. Thanks for talking.
Awesome, guys. Thank you. All the best.
So, working lap 18 of approximately 16, an hour and 25 minutes remaining in this race. We saw Average J Racing and NSS Cookie Jar going at it for a minute. They've now separated back out to 1.1 seconds between them here, Tom. But kind of working our way towards that first pit stop. Could expect the leaders anytime here. 3.6 seconds between Grid Life RWB and VRS Satellite Racing Blue with Adam Crane. If you're that second place car, do you take into consideration what the leader is doing, or do you stay on strategy?
I suspect both of these cars are really kind of running their own strategies, so I don't know that there's going to be much flexibility with that. I don't know whether or not either of them plan to take tires. That would be interesting to know. I do also happen to know that due to a technical issue, DJ Alessandrini's teammate Austin Cobb cannot join the race. So I'm not sure what race control will do about that, but Alessandrini's kind of on his own right now, and there's no solution to that once we're into this race. He can complete the pit stop and finish the race himself, and I suspect he will attempt to do that. I just don't know if race control will assess any sort of penalty for that or just disqualify after, as he is a single driver in a two-driver series.
Yeah, my understanding is that iRacing has systems in place to ensure, as we got dramas here, Roman Yolo off in turn number 8.
Oh, man.
Hold that thought. Fifth place car going off in turn number 8. This has been catching out a couple cars. Did he grab grass on corner entry? Yes.
That car was already really lurching to the right. He didn't have the tires in the grass when he hit the brakes, but the car hunted over there, and he was one of the only other cars that was running on pace with the top 4 as he is trying to run down the Apex V2R 880. That car got really, really hairy in that section. It looks like this is the braking zone that's catching people out later in the stints.
It's a corner that sort of falls under the radar for me a lot of the times. It's not a corner you see a ton of incidents in, but today it's been catching people out. But going back to Alessandrini, I'm pretty sure that there are systems in place to regulate that you have to have a minimum of 2 drivers. So what would happen was Alessandrini would be able to complete the race. However, immediately as the checkered flag falls, he would be disqualified if that structure is set up for this series. So that will put Alessandrini at a huge disadvantage because he will not be able to finish this race and keep his position, which means that Adam Crane essentially would be the leader of this race as it stands.
And unless they're watching our broadcast here, they may not know that, so that might actually be kind of nice to have a little bit of a rabbit to chase. But something happened within the last 10 minutes. He's dropped significantly off the back of the lead Alessandrini, that Ferrari. And the last times through, they've been pretty close on lap times, so I think it was probably a larger mistake within the last 5 or 6 laps for Adam Crane. But it was 2.3 seconds, now 4 seconds, 10 minutes later.
Maybe falling off pace. Well, I was going to say falling off pace, but he just ran his best lap of the event,
yeah.
A 201.586. The problem is, so did Alessandrini, 201.310, which I can't even describe to you how fast that is. 201.3 at race pace, pretty darn quick.
It's super quick. That's closing in on qualifying. The qualifying pole was a 2 minutes .8, and these cars should be every bit as capable on the last lap of a fuel run with no fuel as they are on qualifying.
So Zach Charbonneau on pit lane for Ecto Esports. And we'll see if he passes the car on over. I don't think they can. We're only 40 minutes into this race, so that window to change drivers is not open. So they will not make that swap just yet. And this Zach is one of the teammates that is he is 16 years old. His teammate is 15 years old. Both of them kart racers from Quebec and Ottawa. So this kid's 16 years old here, Tom, and so far so good for this car. Not a lot of scratches on it. Keeping it in one piece. Up to 4th, Marc-Andre Seguin and Christopher Cook. This MC Motorsports car continues its climb back forward.
to be fun to ride on board up the hill, see how much speed this 66 has in relation to the 882. Again, we suspect the setup's pretty different on these two cars, and Christopher Cook has not been able to use that quite to his advantage, although he's tried a number of times. But every time they get to the brakes and to the corners, Marc-Andre Seguin pulls ahead once again, but look at the closing speed. It looks small now, but it starts to really exaggerate here at the end. But eventually the 66 has to lunge onto those brake pedals, shoves it down into turn one, and really made up a good amount of time there.
That car is also filthy. It's got a lot of dirt and debris on it. He's definitely been through the dirt once or twice. And now chasing Marc-Andre Seguin down the back straightaway. Behind them, VRS Satellite Red with Giuliano Romagnolo and Justin Benedetto. This Benedetto car, has not had the day that they've been looking for, Tom, dropping from pole down to ninth with a spin also. And the pace is dropping off at a bit more of a rate than others. Romagnolo just went purple, a 201.803 for him.
Well, yeah, we expected these two cars to be fun to watch, but we didn't expect it to be a battle for eighth. Romagnolo and De Benedetto both struggling at points in this race, but they've found each other on track to race with, and they've kind of settled in. The big climber of this entire race is the car just in front of them. Overtake Racing's Mark Harris has climbed from, I think, 11th to 7th. That BMW is proving to be consistent. So is Mark Harris, and it's really paying off for him.
And just ahead of them, Nathan Block locked up that one of those tires heading off into turn number 8. Usually you lock that inside front. And if you're heading off into a left-hander, it'll be the left front tire or vice versa. And a little bit of damage to the right front of that car. That splitter has a bit of a nick in it, and that could be from hammering a curb or maybe some car-to-car contact we didn't catch. But it's not going to be affecting his performance, I would imagine, but it might hold him up in pit lane just a minute if they did want to repair that. 4.4 seconds between the two race leaders, Seguin and Cook, 4/10 separated. This is for fourth place, and just behind Nathan Block, the other Apex V2R car. Average J Racing and Daniel Salmon side by side through turn number 8. Salmon on the inside, Ferguson on the outside in the Ferrari. He's got some damage on that right rear.
These two having a heck of a battle. It's been going on since we talked to our last interview, but it looks like the Corvette now starting to struggle, runs wide coming off the carousel, and that car has damage. We've seen it in the wall. It's going to be slow in a straight line. The Ferrari is really quick in a straight line, but I think Daniel Salmon is making up for it in the corners.
See that splitter.
And he actually hit the wall on the left side, so that's even the good side of the car.
I don't know. This is definitely one of those Craigslist cars that you had to shoot from the perfect angle to not see where it's got damage. Yep. But a little bit of left side damage. What concerns me is that he's damaged the splitter. That's a pretty important component for downforce here, Tom. We saw him struggling in the carousel, and I think those two things probably align. Meanwhile, up in fourth place again, Cook keeping the pressure on Seguin through turn 5.
I almost wonder how hard he needs to try at this point. You're coming up on 8 minutes to the pit window opens. We talked to teammate Scott McGuire, but Christopher Cook driving the yellow 911 right now. He, again, hasn't really gotten to the bumper, but do you think he's trying to get to the bumper? Every move he's made has been up the front straightaway, now that I think about it. I think he has tried for it, but just can't quite figure out what to do with it.
My question is he just trying to save fuel? I mean, there's got to be a strategy component of that. Is that even worth doing around here, do you think?
It's worth doing to save yourself some time in the pit lane, but when we've ridden on board with him, there's no indication that he's saving fuel. He's really shoving the car down to the corners deep, bombing onto the brake pedal and trying to make up ground, but it's not really paying off as Marc-Andre Seguin just in front leaves him for dead on corner exit, and again tends to pull away in the corners once we get into that twistier sector 2. But look at Cook climb into distance right here at the end of the straightaways. He is inching ever so slightly closer. It's just taking him a long time to get there.
Started 5th, running 5th, so he's actually moved around a lot, but hasn't gone forward at all. He's gone net negative, but not net positive yet today. Chris Cram and Chris Jackson fighting for 11th. Coda Racing and Never Quit Racing, and they are not quitting right now. Here they come. Drivers right into Canada corner, but backs out before they get there. Oh, a lockup for Never Quit. They're going to run wide.
Good save. Normally when you lock the front tires, it's impossible to collect it, but saves it, loses a little bit of gap, but also not going into the back of the Corvette is important.
Big lockup into Canada corner. Kept it almost completely on course. Just got the gravel there a little bit. Touched it to know it was there. The more I'm watching Cook, the more I think that these two are just, they're not completely on the ragged edge, but I think Cook is not forcing the issue right now. We have seen this car do some pretty big lunges earlier in the race, and if he does it again, I think we'll know his intentions. But right now, it doesn't seem like he's rushing this pass, but he's having a look.
You're right. He jumped on the brakes just a little bit early there. Is backing off in the braking zones. That tells me that you're right. Cook is not trying super hard for this. That doesn't mean if he gets the opportunity he won't take it, but is not really trying to force the issue like we saw. It was Romagnolo in the 5 car. He had been making some massive moves and ultimately made that mistake, is behind all of these drivers. And one thing I heard Scott McGuire say is that Porsche tends to be a little slower on the straightaways and tends to be a little bit less forgiving. And we have seen almost all of the mistakes today come from Porsches, proving to be a little bit of a challenging platform.
Yeah, and you look at the running order now. I mean, we've still got a Ferrari leading, a Chevrolet second, and a BMW 7th. That wasn't there when we started. There still are a lot of Porsches in the top 10, but a lot less of them than there were. So I think we are starting to see a little bit of shuffling. And that BMW of Overtake Racing, I am going to predict that that's a top 5 car by the end of this race. And that would mean that 3 of our top 5 drivers, I think, will be cars other than Porsches. For Cook following Seguin up through 13, a little bit wide, big lift there over that jump. That I see you grimace there, Tom. That was a little sketchy.
Yeah, a bit of aero wash. I think the 66 not getting it down into the up over the crest of 13, I should say, and that's a weird spot because you almost rely on that access road as part of the racetrack once you know this place, but you have to trust that it's going to be there every single time, and you're basically turning in blind. Again, a big run up the front straightaway for the 66 of Christopher Cook, but no move again. Marc-Andre Seguin is doing a fantastic job just kind of cruising, and both of these drivers haven't lost any time to everybody else behind, who, for the most part, have all been in front of them at some point in this race.
Mark Harris starting to feel some pressure from Giuliano Romagnolo. Now remember his big dive into turn 5 early in the race. We might see a repeat of that here on the run down the back straightaway. In the mirror, look at that Porsche bearing down. Look out to driver's left. Here he comes.
Move we've seen before. That 5 car is so good on the brakes, gets it pivoted and puts the power down as close to a rear engine as, well, what is it? It's a mid-engine, but as close to rear engine as they can possibly get it there, and gets the power down nicely up through turn 6, and maybe can focus his energy forward. Perhaps he's been dealing with a bit of aero loss. No, a big spin.
Spins out at the exit at turn number 7. He gathers it up, doesn't hit anything, Tom, but another mistake for Romagnolo. The consistency not there. A big moment, got on the curb and lost control, and looked like Mark Harris just missed him. Let's ride on board with Harris as we come out of turn 7.
This just happened so fast. I bet Harris didn't even have time to react to it much. No, didn't even lift. Look at that, flat out for the 12. Overtake Racing.
That's
Picks up
confidence.
the spot back again.
That's confidence. You know that if you can know where the car is going to slide, you're good. And I think he saw that Porsche lock up those tires and knew that it wasn't going to back up or do anything crazy. But what you don't want to do is commit, keep your foot down, and then run into the side of the car sliding the wrong way across the racetrack. So you got to be careful with stuff like that. Seguin and Cook continue to battle for 4th. They just one has to wonder how fabricated is this closeness right now, and is Cook in any urgency to go forward?
Another car that's been like completely quiet for us is the Apex V2R 880 of Matt Corrins. He's matching Alessandrini's lap times right now. They're in 3rd. So while Satellite Blue's VRS Satellite Blue has dropped off of the leader in the Corvette, this 880 is really quick right now. Just set his personal best lap time and matched Alessandrini's last lap as well. So that 10-second gap between himself and the leader is stable, and perhaps if they continue to climb forward, again, the Grid Life team having technical issues, they're going to be a single driver by the end of this. They're a single driver team for this event. We don't know what that means penalty implication wise, but the Apex V2R 880 is theoretically catching our VRS Blue race leader.
Trouble for the 613 racing car off in turn 14, and pass for position happening for 4th. Here comes Cook on the inside of Seguin. We're going to have to go back and look at that again as we were finishing up that other replay. Looked like he did want to go, had a run on the back straightaway and took it.
Finally got the run he needed and takes the position pretty easily. Whoa, a big slide from Seguin at the exit of 5 as well. And now the 66 is checking out. Maybe they can start to respond and pull themselves back closer to that top battle.
So MC Motorsports going the right direction late in this run. And it's interesting that they're actually improving, but they're also not running personal best. They're running a couple tenths off their personal best and still advancing forward. All the drivers that are right now running purple are a little bit deeper in the field, with the exception of Matt Corrins in the 880 car up in 3rd place.
Pit window will open next time through. Things are going to get interesting here. 1 hour and 10 minutes on the timer in your upper left. That's when the pit window opens, and it's open until 50 minutes remain in this race. 20-minute window total. And who pits early, who pits late? How much fuel does everybody even have left?
Can't be a whole lot. I mean, these cars aren't exactly Toyota Priuses out there. And Road America, you're spending a lot of time on throttle, so I'd have to imagine you'd want to come down fairly early into this window. A couple of cars came and stopped earlier. The Ecto Esports car, remember, stopped pretty early in the race. Now they're splitting this up into a different strategy. And also we should note that Timothy Salvatore's RSC C-Team car has been off track for the last 16 laps. It looks like they might be out as De Benedetto hounds the tailpipes of the Overtake Racing BMW.
Finally caught up and see if we can do anything with it before that car pits in. But honestly, if I'm De Benedetto and I can't find a way past this BMW this lap, I might pit, because that will put me in clear track. The last thing he wants is to be held up by Mark Harris. If he feels he's being held up, that's just going to hemorrhage time.
Benedetto closing in here. Will he look out? Drivers left. Oh, yes. Into turn 5 on the brakes. The 16 car pole sitter down the inside. And he will complete that pass. Crossover maybe for Harris. Not quite enough. That M8, though, is really good at corner exit and getting that power to the ground. But not good enough to retaliate on the SPI Racing Porsche. Curtis James in the Just Here for SR car, another car that's kind of slipped under our radar. In front of the 613 machine that went off a few laps ago in turn 14. This 87 started this race in 16th. They've gained 3 spots. They've kept all the fenders on the car so far, and slow and steady might not win you the race, but it might get you top 10.
Certainly, and we've seen a number of cars benefit from that. Obviously, the number 12 Overtake Racing car, but a handful of cars climbing up as the attrition stacks up throughout this race. Staying on track is the best way to gain positions, especially in a long one like this one.
Keep it on the black stuff. Key to winning any race. If you're not on the racetrack, you're probably not going to win the race that's on the racetrack. So, but I'll tell you what, the 613 racing car with Antoine behind the wheel is keeping that pressure on for 13th position. Ran out a little bit wider. Now behind this Corvette, might have to lift earlier. A great run here exiting the kink. Defensive line for Curtis James. Now 613 Racing up the outside into Canada corner. Can he hang on to this spot? Yes, looks like the Just Here for SR car will lift as Nathan Bowe contact. Christopher Cook's going to spin in turn 1 and take out with him Marc-Andre Seguin in turn 1.
Huge surprise. Nathan Block had joined that battle somehow after the two had been bickering for the position, and now Block gets the 4th position back, so it's Apex V2R 881 clean through, but the 882 car, Marc-Andre Seguin, gets tagged on entry. Unfortunately, none of his own doing. I think Cook moved over on him, thought maybe he was clear. I'm not sure. They were on kind of odd trajectories, and took another look at it. Cook's going to try to get back on the normal driving line to parallel, no longer parallel. Cook grabs the door handle and takes both cars with him.
We've seen this MC Motorsports car unstable on the brakes. Remember earlier in the race, heading into turn 1, it moves around a lot. He's so on the edge there, Tom, that as soon as he jumps on the brakes, it scoots left. I don't think it was an intentional, obvious, I'm going to crowd him to the left. I think the car just stepped out and moved him over there, but it's going to be pretty heavy damage for the 882 car on the nose. I don't think it'll hurt the MC Racing car all that much unless he got the floor damaged, but the nose of that 882 is hurt pretty good.
Yeah, almost no doubt going to come to pit lane as soon as they can, just to maybe address some of that damage if the car feels bad too, but that thing looks like a mess. And the other thing is, again, we don't know exactly what will happen with it, but if the Grid Life RWB team is disqualified from the standings, that was a battle for a theoretical podium. And that's going to hurt a lot. Both of those cars out of that battle.
Oh, man, it's getting racy now on the way to the pit stops. Never quit racing. Almost never quit going for the gap there into the carousel. Now, I'm going to make so many jokes with that, Tom. You better be ready for it. Coda Racing in the 888 didn't leave them enough space, but this is a battle for 11th, and it might as well be for the top spot with how they're going for it. So Apex V2R had 3 teams in the top 5 in practice. Now with the 882's trouble, has dropped down to 8th. See if anybody hits pit lane this time through. I'd expect the 2 that were involved in that collision to come down almost immediately.
Yes, they both are on the pit lane. So Marc-Andre Seguin and Chris Cook hitting pit lane among our first takers for the mandatory driver change. We're going to see the second drivers enter those cars. The question is how much repair those cars might take.
There's wing damage to the Christopher Cook car, so he almost has to spend the time to fix that. I thought he didn't have all that much damage, but the right rear also looks like it's had a bit of a hit, so they might spend some time here. And do you think it's worth it to spend 15 or 20 seconds fixing damage here, or would you rather just go and roll with it?
I haven't practiced enough to know what the pace would be, but if that wing damage affects the pace of the car over the next hour and 5 minutes, I have to imagine that that would help as we see the 66 disappear for a second. There he's back, but maybe these cars will be sitting here for quite a while.
Yeah, the reason why he jumped out was because he's going to give the seat over to his teammate, Scott McGuire, who we talked to earlier in this event. So that car will switch hands. Marc-Andre Seguin still behind the wheel of the 882. And they have not done their driver swap just yet. We'll see, maybe assessing some damage, but they're going to leave without making that driver swap, which is weird because they have to come back down pit lane within the next 15 minutes. So maybe just going to roll out and kind of give it a check to see what the pace is and then come to pit lane, but that just seems inefficient to me.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not quite sure what the decision there is, but Marc-Andre Seguin not handing the car over to his teammate, Jack Dulmage.
Leader hits pit lane, Alessandrini on down. Now he's stuck because Austin Cobb, his teammate, I think has made it into the session, so Alessandrini will have to run this race entirely on his own, which should fundamentally disqualify him from the results at the end of the race. Adam Crane stays out, and we're seeing this overcut strategy here, Tom, but it's not really for tires so much as it is running on low fuel. Their car's lighter, you're going to run a little quicker, you're going to try to see if you can extend this run as much as possible. This car's been out on track now for a long time, though, so it's going to need to hit pit lane soon.
Yeah, I would totally take the low fuel if I can, meaning just keep lapping it with no fuel in it. Now, looking to the rules, there is a rule that if you do not complete your stop within the 20-minute window, there is a defined penalty for that, but there is not a defined penalty for if you end up doing the race with a single driver. So that's going to be a race control kind of one-off decision of what to do with the Grid Life RWB car. But it is going to stay out on track as far as we know, and now the pit lane is really getting busy. I'm seeing cars tumble all over the place down the standings as things shuffle around.
Yeah, it looks like we've got Apex V2R 881 on pit lane. The 880 has now switched hands to Emmett Savage. Alessandrini stays in the car. Gavin Sanders now behind the wheel of the SPI racing car that was driven by Justin DiBenedetto. So Sanders now takes command of the pole-sitting car.
Alex Ellis hopped into the VRS red car, and Apex V2R 881, Zach Venier, the other driver we talked to already, is in that Porsche.
So Sanders leaves pit lane in the SPI racing car in 10th.
The other car that hasn't pit yet is the BMW of Overtake Racing. Mark Harris is still circulating as well, 25 seconds behind your current leader on track, which is the VRS Satellite Blue team of Adam Crane. So those were the only two cars in the top 10 that have not completed a pit stop yet, and I don't know how much longer they can run on fuel. Maybe one more lap if they've been running flat out, but if they've been saving, who knows? It could be 2, 3, 4.
Adam Crane comes up the front straightaway. He's going to go another lap, which is interesting. So across the line, and that was a really good lap, a 2:01.809, about 3/10 off his best. Overtake Racing, they just went purple last time around. So let's see if we're going to try to get a conversation with Giuliano Romagnolo, who just jumped out of the VRS red car in just a moment, as they've just made that swap. Mark Harris hits pit lane from second. Alex Ellis in the Romagnolo machine, and going by the Never Quit Racing car with newly seated Tony Kloosterman.
Kloosterman, another driver that we see in the Porsche Esports Canadian Sim Challenge. I got the name backwards a little bit there.
It's hard. It's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words, but either way, that driver is in the top 20 of that championship, which means of all the drivers that attempted to qualify, he was top 20 quickest. So maybe this 121 will certainly, you don't expect it to get any slower, but maybe it'll get even quicker for Never Quit Racing. But he does have a lot of pressure from behind of another fast car. We know Alex Ellis is really quick, and that car was really quick early on. Yeah, with Romagnolo behind the wheel. And we've got Giuliano Romagnolo with us now. Giuliano, welcome. The first stint for your car went okay. A couple scary moments for you in that number 5 car, but take us through the first little bit, your first stint, and how you feel like Alex Ellis is going to bring you guys back through the field here.
Yeah, I mean, Alex and I, quite honestly, we came into this race kind of unprepared. Definitely not as prepared as we were going into the Porsche Esports Cup the other night. But we literally just slapped the setup on. Thank God there's some setups that we can grab off the internet and throw it on the car. But the first stint was it was a lot of learning for me, learning the new setup, learning like the car and the track. I haven't driven a GT in a while, so I definitely did make some mistakes there. That lost me some time. I definitely had the pace towards the end, just not the consistency which hurt us. But Alex is a great driver. I mean, he's definitely one of the best, if not in Canada, the world. And I'm sure he'll be able to knock off some spots for us and hopefully bring us into the top 5 where the car should have been if it wasn't for my my mistakes there. So fuel's going to be tight as well, so we'll see how that plays into a lot of the game plans here. But all in all, I think we'll have a pretty good race towards the end.
Well, Alex looks pretty ragged right now. I was just informed that he's actually an ex-GT3 Cup driver as well. So what's the team structure look like when you're setting up the race car? How much input does Alex have or you have? Or is it something where you just try to tweak it and find out who can get the car handling the best, as we see a great battle for 9th on the racetrack with Ellis in the middle of it?
Alex is definitely racy. He's definitely not one to shy away from the intense battles as you see right now. Clean racer, but also aggressive, so which is good. Yeah, as far as setup goes, we basically did about 10 laps. We really didn't do too much for this go. For the next rounds, we definitely will concentrate. In the past, what we've done is, since we're very familiar with sim racing itself and both raced professionally before, we both bounce ideas back and forth. Alex does like a more pointy front end, where I may like a car that rotates in the rear a little bit more. So we kind of find a middle ground, I guess you can say, for both driving styles and see how fast we can make that car go.
Well, it's a couple weeks until we head to Sebring on March 14th. A couple American tracks to start off the year, but then we sort of head off to the Nürburgring GP, then back to Watkins Glen. That final round, though, that's up in the air. We don't know what track we're running there yet. Is there a track that's not on the schedule that you would like and prefer to have as that final race and give you guys the best chance of winning?
I mean, depending on the dates, it would be nice to race the Hockenheim GP when that comes into play. I know that's going to be on the calendar for the Porsche Esports Cup, which is going to be incredible to see. New track for everybody. It's kind of like an even playing ground, almost like they say when in real life when the rain comes out, it's an even playing ground for everybody. So it's going to be interesting to see. Hopefully we get to race Hockenheim. If it's not Hockenheim, I would say, Suzuka would be a cool track to race at. Road Atlanta, I love a lot. But I'm looking forward to Watkins Glen and Sebring for sure. Those are really fun tracks to race, especially in the GTE. So hopefully that we can perform a little bit better than we are today. But I'm sure by the end of the race, Alex will be able to move up the car. I think he's already passed 2 guys already and already moving. We took tires, which not a lot of people did. So that's definitely going to be an advantage.
All right, Giuliano Romagnolo, teammate Alex Ellis on the ragged edge right now, the number 5 Porsche. Thanks for talking to us. Good luck to you in the rest of this race.
Guys, and we'll talk later.
Talk about ragged edge. Alex Ellis was absolutely muscling that car for a lap. An ex-GT3 Cup driver. Those cars seem to respond pretty well to being aggressive. Is that the same in the 911 RSR, do you think?
I'm not sure about that, but I don't know that I agree with the last statement that Giuliano made about taking tires, because if you look back towards the front, SPI Racing overtook the VRS Satellite Blue team during the pit stops, and that number 16 Porsche came out of nowhere after some mistakes, and I have to imagine it's because Maxime Detilly took tires in the Corvette, and there's no way that the SPI Racing car did. With Gavin Sanders at the wheel. So I think that tire strategy is really starting to move some people forward that are maybe salvaging. Maybe they felt pinned in a corner and they had to not take tires. But I think this battle, what is effectively for the lead, we suspect, with the Grid Life car being in question, that's going to be interesting to see if one car had tires and one car did not.
Under an hour remaining here for the RaceSim Canada Canadian Endurance Series. Emmett Savage out front in the Apex V2R 880 car. And teammates with Matt Corinth. This car is now your race leader, but Alessandrini and Grid Life RWB chasing them down. Now remember, as you alluded to, the dramas with Alessandrini's teammate not being able to get into the session, and that has basically meant that Alessandrini is all by himself, which means that he will probably be disqualified at the end of this race. That would promote Gavin Sanders to 2nd and Maxime Detilly to 3rd. So we're going to see how this all shakes out here, but under an hour left, and from here on out, maybe just one more pit stop, and are we done?
I don't think there will be any more pit stops. With 56 minutes left, they should be good to go. And these cars should run right about an hour at fuel. But still talking tires, Alessandrini did take tires from what I can tell, and Savage did not. So this is a genuine lead for Savage in the Apex V2R 880. But you can see just how quick Alessandrini looks right now with the fresher tires on that car. I think it'll be a matter of time before he picks off Savage. So that means the Grid Life and VRS Blue teams, both first and second before pit stops, taking tires, have shuffled themselves back into the hands of a couple of cars that seem to have not have.
Now also one of those Apex V2R teams in the top 5, the 882 with Marc-Andre Seguin behind the wheel. They have not made their driver swap yet. And my understanding, are they past that window at this point?
No, it'll be
5 minutes.
Just under 6 minutes left before they have to come back down. So we're going to see the 5th place car, the 882, back in the pit lane or face consequences of a stop and go penalty.
Well,
they don't complete that.
If you're not switching drivers, stop and go penalty actually really isn't all that serious of a penalty, all things considered. So maybe we'll see him just try that strategy. I'm not sure how that'll work. Meanwhile, for the lead, here comes Alessandrini, driver's right, and he will go on by. Now, is there some damage to the right front of Alessandrini's car? Is Emmett Savage right behind him? He's going to have another look to driver's right down into turn 3. Battle for the lead again. I saw a little bit of a markup on the right front of that car, that fender.
I've been noticing slight wrinkles on the right front of almost every car. And I wonder if it's because of it, there might be a curb that everybody is using that is just kind of giving that cosmetic crinkle to what appears to be almost every single car on the track right now. So as we pay attention, you can see it there on the front of the 880. And as we pan around, you might see a little bit of a skew to the front bumper on a lot of these cars. But it doesn't, I don't think it's really actually mechanical damage. I think it might just be a little bit of a grimace on it.
Hearing from Jack Dolmage that they have the same issue as the first place car had. They were not able to register. Sounds like it was more of an iRacing issue than a registration issue. So that's interesting to note. And
that's Marc-Andre Seguin's teammate.
Well, that explains why we haven't seen a driver switch. Now, because of that situation, that might save Alessandrini, and they might, again, if the simulator disqualifies him at the end, that doesn't mean that will be the official result at the end of this race. So Alessandrini, knowing now that another car has had that issue, I don't think he would be disqualified from the official results when things get resorted.
Yeah, that'll be up to race control. And again, having two cars with the same issue is certainly going to help their case with this being a simulator, being a piece of software more than anything. Things can happen like that. Now, finally, we're seeing the youngsters from Ecto Motorsports back on pit lane. A late driver change for Matthew Maisonneuve, getting back in the car after that early pit stop that we saw Zachary Charbonneau complete. Not sure. The only reason that I think we might see everybody come in for a splash is because we did see
contact car on the wall. Sorry, Tom. There was one of the VRS cars, or the Apex V2R cars, the 880 of Emmett Savage, second place, just ran into the fence on the front straightaway.
He looks like he's got a hardware issue. That car does have no steering.
Wow. Second place car rolls to a stop in turn number 1. Local caution for turn number 1 and leaves. Wow, dramas for P2. Let's go back and have a look.
He's lost his steering. Watch, we're going to see no inputs at all. There's the loss of steering, and we don't have mechanical failures on the cars here in iRacing, but we do have mechanical failures for the hardware to play the game.
I don't even know. Usually when you see hardware failures, Tom, the steering will lock and stay in a spot. I think what happened here is something might have popped up and distracted him, or maybe his monitors got disconnected or something of that sort. But huge dramas for a car that was running in second for Emmett Savage and Matt Corrence. A dramatic issue on that front straightaway here.
Heartbreaking, and that's a lot harder to overcome than a quick spin or a quick off and rejoin, because now you've got to deal with all the stuff in front of you sitting in your lap. Maybe his steering wheel sitting in his lap, and we don't know, but that's going to be really tough to overcome as they're now sitting back in the pit lane.
Huge dramas for that car. Meanwhile, up in second, Gavin Sanders and Maxime Detilly. A couple seconds apart, but Gavin Sanders, this pole-sitting team, seems like they've got something sorted out here pace-wise.
So there is a note from race control. Both Marc-Andre Seguin and DJ Alessandrini have been given a race control black flag, and now they're being cleared again. So there's some debate, maybe even with race control, about what to do with this. This will be interesting to talk to everybody after the fact. But right now, it is Alessandrini leading the way. Gavin Sanders, after not taking tires, from what we can tell, has resumed second for the number 16 SPI Racing car, and he has started to pull away from the VRS Satellite Blue team of Maxime Detilly in the Corvette.
So Seguin on pit lane now and jumping out of the car That car looks like it's done for the day. That is unfortunate. Could not swap the drivers. Sandrini leader working through some lap traffic. That's the 9 car of Average J Racing with James Liebrecht behind the wheel now. And the other Apex V2R, this is disastrous for Apex V2R in Canada corner. He's late off there at the corner exit.
Looks like a classic lockup. Yep, right front locked up on entry, and the car will not turn. Take a longer look at it, but as soon as you hear that tire go, that is pucker for the driver.
Right there, locks up and just understeer, understeer, understeer straight off into the gravel. Didn't hit anything too hard, no damage on that car, but will drops down to 7th. But Apex V2R really having issues past the halfway point here in this race.
And this car still is their leading car, with the other issues for the other 2 cars. One is off track completely, one is out of the server completely, and that leaves just Zachary Vanier running, sitting in that 7th position with a little bit of damage on the left front of that car, but probably not much. He got the car mostly stopped before the wall stopped him.
Battle for 11th spot, Jason Roy taking over for NSS Cookie Jar. James Liebrecht goes off track just slightly, pulls it back on course, loses some ground. 50 minutes to go. Go
Hang
ahead.
on, swap for 2nd place. SPI Racing is suddenly behind the the VRS Satellite Blue team. The Corvette has resumed the point. I don't know when it happened. I just happened to look up at my screen and see that they changed positions.
It's down maybe. See here, here's Gavin Sanders rolling through turn 1. Car off track in front of them. I have to wonder if this held him up a little bit.
Car off again. That is the Ecto Motorsports car spinning across the nose, had to come to a complete stop, and the Corvette didn't have to slow roll at all. So now the VRS Satellite Blue team, Max Distilly in the Corvette, leads the SPI Porsche, but the Porsche is still within touch.
Gavin Sanders behind the wheel of that car now. Alex Ellis for VRS Satellite Racing Red is 22 seconds behind that 3rd place car, and that's really all it comes down to the tire situation, I think, Tom. So there's been a little bit of shuffling. Well, car off track again. That's Liebrecht. It is all going crazy here in the middle portion of this race. Liebrecht goes off at turn 3. I think he just got in there a little bit hot and ended up off the course.
Well, that brings me back to one of our keys to the race, driver changes. Getting in the car cold after 60 or 70 minutes of driving for watching your teammate can be a little bit tricky, and a lot of these drivers getting in on their 1st, 2nd, or 3rd laps are making mistakes, and it's affecting not only them but drivers around them, as we see that affected the battle for 2nd place. That said, we just saw the black flag from race control for DJ Alessandrini renewed. So we might see the Grid Life RWB car come down the pit lane soon, but again, they've kind of gone back and forth on that one a couple of times. I'm not going to say that until the car is on the pit lane.
Looks like Maxime Detilly was held up slightly there by the slower Ferrari there at the exit of turn 6. That brings Gavin Sanders right up to the tailpipes of Maxime Detilly for 2nd, all happening 15 seconds behind Alessandrini.
Gavin Sanders is quick right now. He's closed the gap back up to the back bumper of the 18 car in front, and he had pulled a lead out of over a second from when they came out of the pit lane. I really think, even though the Porsche did not change tires from what I could tell on that pit stop, I think it's a quicker car.
Into Canada corner now. On the brakes. We've seen these Porsches be so impressive. Slowing down today. A little bit of dirt off the right side tires. Maxime Detilly getting all the way down to the apex plus some. And Alessandrini will skip pit lane this time through as well. So again, he'll have to come down and serve that penalty at some point.
Sanders is looking racy. He was hunting in the mirrors of the 18 in front through 13, and now we'll have a draft up this front straightaway. Does the 16, the SPI Racing car, the pink Porsche in the background, does he make a move down into turn 1? No, I think the Corvette is really quick on the straights, and that confirms what Scott McGuire told us earlier.
Yeah, it definitely seems like the Porsche doesn't quite have the legs that it needs to compete with the Corvette and the BMW. Hearing Austin Cobb rallying to get the 30-second penalty for not having the driver swap applied at the end of the race rather than in a stop and hold penalty, which would, because effectively a stop and hold in pit lane would be much more than just 30 seconds because you have to drive down the pit lane. So now the driver's being shown a 55-second hold time. So there is a lot of confusion around this penalty and how it's going to be applied to the race leader.
Definitely, it's an interesting and challenging thing to make a decision on for race control, because it's kind of out of their control, but it's also really affecting the race. They're the only team that didn't have to change cars or change drivers. Once again, race control has pulled the black flag from Alessandrini, so they really can't make up their minds on what they want to do with it. I know they want to take care of it somehow, but they can't figure out what they want to do.
Yeah, it's a tricky
Meanwhile,
situation.
this is a battle for what I think will, no matter what, become the lead. And VRS Blue is pulling away again from SPI, but I think Gavin Sanders is not done yet.
Yeah, he's a little quicker in general than Maxime Detilly at the moment. Last time by was about 5/10 of a second quicker. So I would expect Sanders to get by Maxime Detilly within the next few laps. 45 minutes to go, though. What's the rush, really? I mean, don't force yourself into an issue and get yourself off course. We've seen that burn a couple of teams, including the VRS Satellite Racing Red team is now 21 seconds back from this duo right here.
Well, we know older tires can be every bit as fast as newer tires, but the margin for error is much bigger. And the SPI racing car has to be careful. Gavin Sanders has to be careful not to make any large mistakes in that Porsche, because the fresher tires on Maxime Detilly's Corvette are going to be a lot more forgiving for him. So Gavin Sanders almost has to be a little bit more perfect to get the same result.
More perfect, easy, right?
Yeah, more perfect. Just do it better.
Just do it faster. Just drive harder. Hold that gas pedal down a little bit more. Through the exit at turn 2 and into turn 3, that gap has started to extend itself just a little bit. It is the closest battle on the racetrack at the moment. 10 of our current 18 competitors that are out on the racetrack, make that 19 competitors on the racetrack, are on the lead lap.
Just crossed over the 45-minute mark, so we're into the final stages of this race. And this is your leader on track, but again, there is a debate going on how to handle the technical issues that have caused the Grid Life RWB to be a single driver car for this event. He has just been given a black flag again in the server from race control. This is the third time, and we've seen it pulled twice, so I think they're figuring out what they want to do with it. Something's about to happen with this car.
Yeah, they said that the penalty they can't find something that's under 30 seconds of a penalty, so that's going to be the minimum that they can apply as they stop and hold. Maxime Detilly defending from Sanders as they work by some lap traffic. I believe, is that the 73 car, or 75, the NSS cookie jar car driven by Jason Roy, currently 11th on the field. This is the closest battle. I'm not done looking away from it just yet, because I do think it's going to swap. Look how much better Sanders gets through the kink, especially. If he can capitalize on it down here into the Canada corner, slow down maybe for Maxime Detilly. He moves over to the right.
And it caught Gavin. Gavin Sanders was very confused as to why that just happened. Both of them lift. I think I've been there before. You don't know what's going on, and you're like, there's no way he's just giving this to me yet. He is? Okay, I'm going. So SPI Racing resumes what I think will become the race lead within the next 2, maybe 1 lap. VRS Satellite Blue, for no reason as far as we could tell, lifting after the kink.
Yeah, that was weird, and that's one of those moments where you second guess. You're like, did I just pass the corner station? Was there a yellow flag? And
yeah.
you have to wonder, did I just do something silly? I'm thinking back to Grid Life Touring Cup with Eric Cattilla at Gingerman in spring kickoff last year, passing a yellow flag. Wonder why everyone was going so slow. But no caution flag in that sector, so Maxime Detilly just lifts and lets Sanders on by. So Alessandrini will have a couple laps to serve that penalty. Wow, one of those cars.
That's the Overtake Racing BMW. I was just noticing that the same as you. The heavy damage on the front of Diego Zuccarelli's car, and that happened after the pit stop. So another car that suffered damage with the second driver getting into it. Zuccarelli seems to have had a major issue, is missing the entire front end of that car, and the BMW is very slow. You can just hear how hard it's working.
I didn't even know you could do that. So that's kind of impressive. I'll give Diego that, but that car is looking a bit more like a Saturday Night Modified car than it is a GT endurance machine. Struggling with that now. Here's Emmett Savage giving a spot to Darian Roy in the 02 Night Blind Racing car. We haven't talked a lot about this car tonight. Currently running in 13th after starting in 20th. They've had a pretty good day. Not a spectacular one, but they've just done nothing but climb forward and keep themselves out of trouble. We're finding what happened to Diego. Left pit lane and kind of blitzed those rear tires and ended up in the outside concrete.
Yeah, spun on pit exit, actually, just pretty much right out of the pit lane and into the concrete wall, unfortunately, for that Overtake car. So we were betting the BMW might become a top 5 car by the end of the race. Unfortunately, not today, but there's 4 more rounds, and that car looks to be strong in the championship.
Emmett Savage back by Darian Roy's Night Blind Racing BMW. Oh, he missed the apex there in the arrow wash of the lead car. Almost drove off course, but kept it on just enough. And Savage still trying to climb back forward after their issues they had earlier. Again, this is the car that found the fence with some sort of electronic issue. Miguel de Souza, ooh, he's off. This is on the entrance to turn 7. 613 Racing. How calm. I mean, the racing was very intense at the beginning, but we didn't see a lot of accidents. Now it seems like they're all kicking off. Just runs wide and just a lazy left and then back to the right, Tom.
Yep. Lost the power, or lost the rear end on the power, and then floats up into the wall eventually. But you're right. There's something about after these pit stops, there's no reason that any of the second drivers should be having issues that the first drivers didn't, but a lot of incidents happening here in the second stint of this race. 40 minutes remaining, and DJ Alessandrini serving a penalty, a stop and hold in the pit lane that will effectively be close to 55 seconds that we know, which means the battle for the lead is now SPI Racing versus VRS Satellite Blue. And Satellite Blue, Maxime Detilly had just let Gavin Sanders by on a couple laps ago at the kink, and Gavin Sanders is starting to pull away.
Remember, this is the pole-sitting car. We knew it was supposed to be fast, but in the early stint, Tom, we just saw that car dropping rearward more and more and more, and we thought that we wrote that car off early because we just didn't see the pace, and here they are leading the race.
It had the big spin right here on track, and after it went to the gravel trap, we assumed that the 16 was out. As we say that, gravel trap again, a little commentator's curse in a moment for Gavin Sanders, but collects it very nicely, and doesn't seem to have lost a lot of time to the Corvette. But I'm curious why the Corvette is struggling for pace.
Yeah, Maxime Detilly all of a sudden running a little bit slower. DJ Alessandrini back out in pit lane right in front of the 613 Racing Porsche in 8th. So he'll probably climb up at least, he might get 1 or 2 of these spots back by the end. Maxime Detilly all of a sudden dropped off our timing screen. And hopefully this is not another hardware-related issue. Just driving down through the kink here, did he go off or did he have a connection problem? Just went through the kink and then disappeared. So a connection issue for Maxime Detilly, the second place car for VRS Satellite Racing Blue. Maxime Detilly and Adam Crane, that car now disappeared.
Massive surprises all over the place. Right now, that would promote the VRS Satellite Red team. Another car that we had counted out, Alex Ellis up to second place in the 5 car. Giuliano Romagnolo, we talked to him earlier, and that car also had a spin in the exact same spot. So our top 2 cars both spinning in the same place on the track, but salvaging it for the best.
So let's just run this down here. We've got 38 minutes to go. Our race leader had an issue where his teammate couldn't connect, got a 55-second stop and hold, comes out in 8th. Our other drivers inside the top 5, the Apex V2R 880 car, had their wheel or something disconnect. They hit the pit wall in the front straightaway. We just had our second place driver, the driver that got promoted to that position, Maxime Detilly, just disconnect randomly. What's next? Is it a full moon outside or something? I don't think the sun's set yet, Tom, but I would guarantee you it's a full moon somewhere.
Who knows? It did just start snowing here in Chicago, and that seems to throw the whole world.
It's not going to throw the
tizzy.
Canadians off, though.
No, that's true. That's true. So, yeah, you're right. I don't know. And a couple of other big surprises. Never Quit Racing up to 3rd. Tony Kloosterman having defended for as long as he could on Alex Ellis, but has lost touch of that battle to the tune of almost 10 seconds. Then Coda Racing up to 4th, and Apex V2R 881. They've had their own issues too, but they're up to 5th.
Yeah, Zachary Veneer jumping in this car. In a former GT3 Cup Series, or excuse me, this is the TCR driver. Ran
TCR champion.
The FAF Racing Audi TCR. Adam Crane jumps back in the VRS Satellite Racing Blue car. Now, this is an interesting scenario because they've traded drivers back. I don't think there's anything wrong about that. It's just not advised. I think you can make as many swaps as you want as long as you make at least 1 between minute 50 and 70. So this is fair and kosher. But now he comes back out of pit lane in 9th. Now that's actually not too bad, all things considered. Getting a top 10 with a situation like that, I'll give him a lot of credit for that. The other thing that happened is because it was a disconnect with internet and not with a wheel, you didn't hit anything, car's still in one piece.
Yes, and kind of a cool way to salvage it because the other driver lost internet connection. The second driver's still sitting there. Adam Crane could jump back in the car, make the most of it. You can see he's still getting back up to speed as he locks up the tires down into turn 5, and that's what we're talking about with hopping into these cars cold. The car's not cold, but you are. You got to figure out how to get back up to speed. So even though Adam Crane drove for an hour, your outlap, it's easy to make small mistakes like that.
Lots of dramas here in the first round of the 2021 Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series. Out front, it's SPI Racing with Gavin Sanders. Teammate Justin DiBenedetto was the pole sitter, dropped all the way down to 9th. And then on the pit stops, they gained a bunch of time with Gavin Sanders jumping behind the wheel and has since been running fairly competitive times. However, Alex Ellis has been ripping off mid-201-minute lap times. And with 22 minutes left, we've got just about 18 laps to go. At a second a lap, not quite there, Tom, but he could really rip into this lead that Gavin Sanders has. Alex Ellis is not out of this thing yet.
No, he certainly could, and he actually set the fastest lap of the race last time through before that 201.299 was 2 laps ago. Then the 201.4 was last lap, so this number 5 car is really, really fast right now. And I totally agree. 22 seconds might be a little bit too much in 35 minutes, but it's going to get a lot closer than it is.
And that assumes that Gavin Sanders doesn't make any mistakes, which I think is highly possible.
And we know that this car did take tires, the Alex Ellis machine for VRS Satellite Red. SPI Racing did not. So Gavin Sanders has a higher opportunity for a mistake, that's for sure.
Well, and thinking back, Alex Ellis' teammate said that taking tires they thought was a good idea. And we thought maybe that wasn't a great strategy, but here we are now, and we're starting to think maybe having tires at the end will be the advantage they need to run down Gavin Sanders. And looking deeper in the field, here's Jason Roy. Emmett Savage behind in the 880 on a recovery climb. This is for 11th.
Ooh, almost makes contact with the rear diffuser of the Corvette in front, but keeps it clean, goes for the nice setup on exit. Look at the momentum the 880 has onto the front straightaway, pops to the inside. And the question is, does the Porsche have enough straight line speed to complete this pass down to turn 1, or are they going to drag race? It looks like a drag race. Look at the speed of the Corvette.
Yeah, that Corvette has a little bit of damage, which probably isn't helping this scenario, but Emmett Savage pulls alongside into turn 1, and
he tapped brakes to make sure that they would go single file. Knew he was going to get that position taken away eventually.
And here's Grid Life RWB with Alan Sandrini still behind the wheel, passing a car that we have not mentioned a whole lot tonight. That is Screeching Moose Motorsports, now with Taylor Parsons behind the wheel. And this is a car that's just flown under the radar. They've had a pretty calm day, 12th to 7th, a good result for sure for this team. Now this might, a 7th and 5th and a 6th, not going to win you a championship, Tom, but if this is your worst round, you're going to be good. We got a car spinning. That is the 0-2 car.
No, it's an incident with Alex Ellis.
Oh, trouble for their second place car.
The second place car, you mentioned we were on a trend of the full moon incidents, and all of a sudden a lapped traffic car, we saw it happen really late, kind of an awkward.
Oh, no, Ellis had problems. It just lifted. Wow.
It looks like Ellis slowed down to crash into him almost. This was a pass that was completed before turn 3, lunged on the brakes. An odd interaction between these two cars.
Oh, he ran wide.
And then we're going to see Ellis mash on the brakes and swerve into a lapped car.
Oh, man, that's not going to go over well, I'm sure.
A very confusing incident for sure, whether it was miscommunication or intentional.
That looks
especially for a lapped car. You know, if you're running in second place, it's easy to scrub clean of that and forget about it. But Ellis to the pit lane calls it a day in the 5.
That was dramatic to say the least, and threw away what could have been a win. They were chasing down Kloosterman, and I don't think that damage was going to hurt them at all. So I don't understand that, Tom.
No, that incident certainly didn't put him within the threat of the 121, but Never Quit Racing, Tony Kloosterman up to second place. Now, you mentioned that this car was going to be a factor, and it's a massive factor now dealing with that BMW we saw earlier. But Kloosterman, we know from our Canadian Esports Championship, 65 years old and here running in the top 2. Jokes that he's often could be the grandpa of people he's racing with, but killing it right now around the outside of the BMW.
Well, they sometimes say, Tom, when you get older, you get wiser, and Tony Kloosterman has been wise enough to keep this car on course and not run into anybody or anything today. And here he is in second. Now, I don't think they're going to have the pace to go run down Gavin Sanders, but that doesn't mean they can't win this race, and that also doesn't mean that a second place wouldn't be perfectly adequate and a good result for today. So Kloosterman is sitting in a catbird seat here for the last 15 laps or so of this race.
Certainly could be, and that also promotes Grid Life RWB back up into the top 5. So the Ferrari still maintaining a good position nonetheless. And then Coda Racing and Apex V2R 881 rounding out that top 5.
So 31 minutes remaining in the first round of the 2021 Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series, we've seen a whole lot of revolving door at the top of the order for now. We've had, I don't know, 5 or 6 different leaders at this point, and about 4 of them had major issues take them out of the race. We've seen lap cars tango with lead lap cars and disconnects and internet problems and registration issues. And I think there's an elephant that's walked across the racetrack and broke the pavement. And the ice cream man is on the floor sleeping. There's all sorts of stuff going on in Road America. I don't know what's happening, Tom, but there's enough of it, I think, for me for today.
Well, there's still 31 and a half minutes left in this race, so nothing is over until it's over, and there's still, that's a quarter of the race left. But right now, SPI Racing, Gavin Sanders leading the way, continuing to lap at a completely sturdy pace. Nowhere near as fast as Ellis had been going, but Ellis is off the track now, and Tony Kloosterman is not a threat on current pace to start to run down our leaders. Things can kind of be on cruise for SPI Racing.
Coda Racing in the 888 car. How about these guys? Malcolm Strachan behind the wheel here in the 888. They started this race in 13th. How about 10 spots up to 3rd? And they had a little bit of damage at some point. I think they've cleared most of it off, and it's just a good day.
Very good day, and they have a nice buffer to Apex V2R 881, which is Zachary Vanier in 4th. Everybody spread out by at least 10 seconds.
Grid Life RWB back in 5th, and Screeching Moose Motorsports 6th. 613 Racing had that issue a little while ago with Miguel Salza in the wall at the exit of turn 6 and entrance to turn 7. Now running 7th, and just here for SR, another C8R that we hadn't talked a whole lot about. Andrew Potter running at 8th, then Adam Crane picking up where his teammate left off in 9th place in the number 18 car, then Emmett Savage continuing a recovery climb after that car hit the fence on the front straight. And hearing that Detilly had the PC die on him.
Oh, man.
Well, rather have that than just have your screens die, because then you'd run into something. At least as soon as your PC dies, the car goes off the racetrack.
Maybe for his teammate, but usually your PC dying is more than a race-ending thing. You're going to have to address that one for a couple of days. Things have cooled down significantly. 94 from 110 at the start of this race. So the cars are certainly going to get faster and faster, and that might be an indication why this car right here, the 21 of Grid Life RWB, is back running mid-201s and hauling the mail. He's only got 7.5 seconds before he picks up 4th place on Apex V2R 881. So Zachary Vanier might have to tack her up a little bit if he wants to maintain that 4th position.
So I know there's still a lot of Porsches up front, and 2 of them are leading. But remember how our ticker looked at the beginning of this round. Well, all the Porsches stacked at the top of the order. Now it's a pretty good mix of Chevrolets. A lot of the C8Rs are actually up in the top 15. All of our C8Rs are in the top 11, which is interesting to note. Both of our Ferraris are in the top 12, and no M8s in the top 10. So I know that there's a lot of circumstances that led to that, but a lot of manufacturers shuffling. Look at that, BMW, Porsche, all the way down the grid. Nice and organized there, but not in the way I'm sure those BMWs or Porsches would like to have it.
The other thing I noticed is the VRS Satellite Blue team with Adam Crane at the wheel. Even with all their issues, they are the last car on the lead lap. So they're still within the lead lap distance, 7.5 seconds for up the road to just here for SR with Andrew Potter at the wheel. But they had been doing so well that even with all the issues they had, still leading, still on the lead lap, I should say.
Yeah, and 104 seconds back from the overall race leader, which is Gavin Sanders, still by 33 seconds. Interesting to note that Adam Crane and team are sponsored by, well, no other than VRS, which is a setup building group. And so that's an obvious advantage, I think, to be able to have setups built for you. And I'm sure that there's a lot of setup work going on behind the scenes to make these cars fast. And they have been fast today, just not consistent enough, and issues sort of sidelining them midway through the race. So we'll see maybe their true pace at Sebring. But Sebring's one of those racetracks that's coming up on March 14th that is a big question mark for me, because it's a lot more of a physical racetrack in terms of the race car. Lots of bumps. This is a pretty smooth racetrack, all things considered. While they're similar in size and length and the sort of number of corners, I think there's a lot different in terms of the surfaces and how the cars that will handle there versus Road America. So I think we'll see a different set of cars running up towards the front there.
Agreed. They couldn't feel more different to drive around, even though one is each are similar number of corners and length. But Sebring is a totally different animal, and that is where a team that has some more setup support, like a VRS supported team, might be able to find a little bit of an upper hand. But you can bet we know that VRS is on half of these cars on this grid because they do allow other people to subscribe to their setup services, and they
sort
are
of the
often
point.
very fast.
It's sort of the point of the whole
Yeah,
thing, isn't it?
exactly.
NSS Cookie Jar with Jason Roy and James Liebrick. These guys actually had a battle earlier that sort of fizzled, but Average J Racing trying to charge back forward after starting this race in 21st up to 12th. So dead last on the grid up to almost the top 10, and here comes 11th just in front, dangling the carrot. I was surprised at how quiet these Ferraris are, and the C8 for that matter.
All three of them, big turbos on a big V8, and all of a sudden they don't make any noise. But a big run, the Ferrari fast in a straight line. We saw that Corvette, how fast it was a couple of laps ago. Now the Ferrari easily motors by, and James Liebrick picks up the position from James Roy. And that's almost into the top 10 for Average J Racing.
Yeah, almost 15 seconds up to Emmett Savage, who's running a good bit quicker, though. So I think that will probably be where that car stays for the last 25 minutes without a little bit of chaos to help him out. Notably, Tony Klusterman has gotten right back on pace with the race leader, Gavin Sanders, but without big dramas for the front runner. I don't think that gap is going to come down. As I say that, though, the chance for big dramas, just based on percentage of drivers having big dramas, is probably pretty high.
It's either pretty high or everyone's gotten it out of their system. But the battle that is also compressing is for fourth. The Apex V2R 881 is getting quickly run down by GridLife RWB. See, there's the gap between the two. 25 minutes, that's going to be gone in no time.
So Veneer in the 881, Alessandrini behind the wheel of the number 21 car. Down the back straightaway, there's that gap. And the 66 car of MC Motorsports, they're down a lap. Remember, they had issues earlier into turn 1, colliding with one of the Apex V2R cars. Right now, that was with Marc-Andre Seguin in the 882, which is now out of the race. But Scott McGuire has piled that car back inside the top 15. But they got 2.5-second gap up at Federico Fernandez in the LSM team, number 19 BMW. There he is. And that gap will probably reduced to 0, so MC might get up to 13th or 14th here by the end of this race.
Yeah, and that car took an extra trip through the pit lane for some reason. Right after Scott McGuire got in the car, he came right back down the pit lane, so I wonder if it was almost a black, actually assume it was a black flag for maybe speeding in the pit lane or something else, but you can just see how much damage that car has. It's certainly not going to be a happy race car to drive, and Scott McGuire is just making the best of it.
Yeah, you can see the whole right side skirt is pretty well destroyed, and one thing about GT endurance cars and any cars at this level of racing is there's not a single part on the outside of this car that is not important. And the second you go bending them up and breaking them off, your car is not going to do the same things that it did when it had all the parts and pieces it was supposed to have. And the engineers will tell you that it's your fault you broke it. This car did handle good before you put it in the fence, but obviously not Scott McGuire's fault, just a tangle with his teammate.
I was talking to a crew chief for a Porsche 911 GT3R team once, and they pointed to the small mesh that covers the intake on the front of the grille. Just a small, maybe 1 foot by 1 foot piece of mesh. Ask, you want to know what that costs? Tell me. $1,600 for that little mesh.
Oh, man.
So not only is everything on the outsides of these cars very important, it is also very expensive.
Well, the good news is that in iRacing, that mesh is a one-time purchase of $11.99.
That is true.
And
it comes with the rest of a Porsche.
It comes with the rest of a Porsche along with it, so that works out nicely. 23 minutes to go, and no other major battles happening at the moment. It's just a kind of a run to the end here, except for, as you mentioned a moment ago, Apex V2R 881 with Zachary Veneer being chased by Alessandrini down this backstretch, and this is going to get a lot more interesting before it doesn't, as that 21 car was almost 2.5 seconds quicker than Veneer last time.
I was going to say, it's closing very, very quickly. I don't think this will be much of a fight, but still for Apex V2R over the day, having such a hard time, just getting a top 5 for one of their cars is going to be a little bit of a silver lining for a frustrating day, because even the 881 has been off track and had issues. We'll see how long it takes Alessandrini to pick this position off. He gets a nice run down and towards turn 8. And I suspect this thing might be done by even the exit of the carousel. Goes from the inside. Yes, he does.
And the 881 gave him space there as he squeezes on by for 4th. So move Alessandrini back into position. Now remember, they were vouching for a lesser penalty. They took the heavier of those penalties, a 55-second stop and hold, and they're still inside the top 5. If they show up to the rest of this series, dangerous for everybody else. Now, they're not eligible for prizing. Again, they're a US-based team. Can't win the prizes, but they certainly can take away the wins.
I'm not great at math, but 22.5 minutes left with 7 seconds until they catch Coda Racing. A podium is not mathematically impossible for Grid Life RWB right now.
I'd say it's mathematically likely.
I would say so. Again, I'm not good at math, but
I'm not either.
Coda Racing is now just seen that Grid Life team pop up behind them, and the gap has already shrunk by about a half a second. That's going to light a fire under them, but I think it might be a matter of time before we got a battle for a podium.
Yeah, I just have to wonder. It seems like this Gavin Sanders SPI racing car, it seems like they spent the same time on pit lane as everybody else that didn't take tires. But, man, they seem like they benefited way more than everybody else did. And I'm trying to figure out how that happened.
Well, the other cars that didn't take tires and benefited from it were the Apex V2R 880, I think. That car was, before it had their issues, that car had inherited the lead, remember, with Emmett Savage at the wheel. So that car would be up in that mathematically, but the other issues took him out.
Some lap traffic for Gavin Sanders to negotiate here. I think the only way he could lose this race is by having miscalculated fuel or by finding himself in a collision or off-track situation. 20 minutes to go. It's about 11 laps worth of racing remaining here, maybe about 10 when it's all cycles out. But now it's just about lapping traffic, and there's only 9 cars remaining on the lead lap, so almost the majority of the field is already a lap or more down. So Sanders is really just kind of coasting here. No pressure from behind. Don't throw this race away.
Got to get in his rhythm and try to make sure that anything that might throw him off his rhythm is a really, really, how do you say, you just don't take any risks, really. You want to maintain that rhythm and not change as much as you can, because anytime you throw your rhythm off is when you can throw the car into the wall or make a small mistake that becomes a big mistake.
So impressed with this Never Quit Racing team. They never quit. I know I've been made that joke about 8 times today, but Kloosterman started in 9th, running 2nd now, and not a scratch on that car. They've done a really, really solid job. And going back to Coda Racing in the 888 car in 3rd, they would like this last 20 minutes to be about 20 seconds because Alessandrini's running them down at a 1.5 seconds a lap here.
We should say while we had them on the camera, the starting driver for Never Quit Racing, Chris Jackson, would like to thank his wife Mary that allows him to race on the sim. So he says we owe her a win. I think a 2nd place is going to feel just almost as good at win anyway.
Yeah, and we're not done yet. Still got 20 minutes,
It's
so we've seen enough chaos that I think it's smart not to project, because I think we've seen a lot of projection, and that was often ending in drivers ending up in the fence. So I think we'll hold off on declaring them second just yet, but we'll see if Mary is the lucky charm they make.
Down in the background, the VRS Satellite Blue team, Adam Crane did pick up 1 spot over just here for SR. We knew that was probably going to happen. So 20 minutes to go, and only 2 seconds up the road for their next position. Yes, they are running down 613 Racing, Miguel De Souza, really quickly.
Yeah, last time by for Souza, 205.146. That's certainly not going to do it with a 201.631 behind you. That's only 0.2 off their best for Adam Crane. Very quickly running down that 613 car.
Crane, the fastest car on the track right now, including Grid Life. So that Corvette is really, really quick. What could have been, it's got to be a big thorn in their side going to Sebring. Maybe that Corvette handles Sebring a little bit better. Who knows?
Yeah, from what I've seen, that's a pretty good car on the bumpy racetracks. And remember, this car was basically only 2 seconds behind Alessandrini, the leader, for that entire first segment. And then the dramas after they had swapped drivers. So Adam Crane is out hungry to pick up whatever he can to sort of eliminate that points deficit they will have to any other teams. But I think the other thing we have to remember is that this is a 5-round series. Just because this round is chaotic does not mean that Gavin Sanders will go out here and crush everybody the next 4 rounds. Gavin Sanders wasn't lucky, let's be honest. This team worked really hard to get here, but it did take a couple circumstances to get him to the race lead. So I wouldn't expect to go to Sebring and expect to see Gavin Sanders and team up front for the entire round. I'd expect to see Alessandrini and some of our VRS satellite teams and the Apex V2R cars. Those were the cars that were the staples at the front of the beginning of this race when the field hadn't had all their chaotic messes breaking up all the outright speed.
Other than the SPI car being a pole sitter.
Correct.
And they really only dropped out by their own mistake. So I think maybe they can reflect on that and try to head into the other races with a little bit more consistency, and they won't rely on the misfortune of others, the schadenfreude of others.
Yeah,
for their wins.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the SPI racing car was De Benedetto made a mistake, yes, but he also just lacked general pace. As you see Souza make a mistake, and here comes Crane trying to take advantage of it, couldn't. But De Benedetto was lacking just general pace at the end of that run. So we'll see if Sebring is better for them. Whoa, that was tight. Crane couldn't quite get to the inside there. We'll try to set up a run for the front stretch. And third place becoming hot pretty quick. Malcolm Strachan in the 888 with Alessandrini right behind, but I think this one is more likely to change the 4P3.
Wow, look at the run the Corvette got at the end of the straightaway. He's going to easily dive up the inside, and I think that was the body damage on the Porsche starting to play a factor down the straightaway with the aerodynamics. Oh, it's a lunge up the inside for turn 7. You normally do not pass there, but Alessandrini shoves it in and makes it happen anyway. The Ferrari up into a podium position for Grid Life RWB. And Coda Racing off the third place step for now in the Corvette.
It's pretty impressive. Back up to third place, 25 seconds back from Never Quit Racing, though. I don't think he'll be able to run anybody down from that far back. Gavin Sanders continues to drive away from Tony Kloosterman. And drops a wheel off on the edge of the rumble strip there, but no battle in sight for the front runner here for SPI Racing. And having a look at the laps that this team has led, well, this is just Gavin Sanders alone, has led 14 in the 51 laps that we've completed. While Alessandrini has led 28, about half the race that we've completed so far.
Just behind him, the battle for fourth isn't done yet. Apex V2R with Zach Vernier has continued to lap much quicker than Coda Racing's Malcolm Strachan. And I think with 15 minutes left, the Porsche driver has the opportunity to catch the Corvette. That black dot up in the distance is the Corvette of Coda Racing. So it's going to be a bit of a tall ask with 5 seconds deficit and 15 minutes to go. But I think it's probable.
Well, last time by, 2:06.2. That was a real slow lap for Strachan. Vernier, 2:04.438. Almost 2 full seconds quicker, so that would only be about 2.5 laps. We've got about 8 to go. I'd say that's also likely for Strachan to lose a 4th position. Just here for SR with Andrew Potter. Still hanging on to 9th. They're the last car on the lead lap right now in turn 14. And 114 seconds back. So they're leaving turn 14 now. Gavin Sanders is coming up the hill here. And about to put them 1 lap down. I just have to say, though, for Sanders, the consistency that they have had in the last 15 or 20 laps of this race, a 2:02.3 is only about a half second off from their best time of the day. Whereas Never Quit Racing with Kloosterman is almost a full second off of their best. So I'd say that Sanders has been mighty consistent here, and that's helping him maintain this and also keeping the car on the racetrack. I haven't seen a mistake out of Sanders since he jumped in this car.
No, and he's on the same tires that this car started the race on. So, I mean, just knowing the typical strategy for an endurance race, oftentimes the stronger driver will be the finishing driver, and that's not obviously all the time, every single time, and that's not by the rules here either in this series, so we don't know for a fact. But if the SPI Racing team decided to have their slightly stronger driver finish the race, then yeah, when your first driver is as good as Justin DiBenedetto, then Gavin Sanders is expected to be every bit as good and maybe even, you know, as strong as he's been this entire time.
Closing in on the final 10 minutes of the first round of the 2021 Race Sim Canada Endurance Series. Next round will be March 14th at Sebring. And a similar length and corner number, but a very different racetrack. Then after that, we'll be headed to the Nürburgring GP circuit on April 11th, followed by Watkins Glen, the boot configuration on May 16th, rounded out by June 20th, which is TBD. The drivers will vote on that racetrack after Watkins Glen. Now I don't know if that vote is locked down to a specific number of tracks or if it's just any track, Tom, but I'm curious, for Canadian Sim Racing Series, no Canadian racetracks. We talked about this earlier. I would expect Mossport or Montreal to be one of the highest on the list for almost everybody here.
I'd be surprised if it weren't, but that was not on Alex Ellis's list, interestingly enough. He said Suzuka, he said Road Atlanta, so we might have a big old range of tracks left in there.
Tony Kloosterman, 40 seconds back, 22 back farther to find Alessandrini in third. Well, their battle's shaping up at the moment. Again, after the conclusion of this race, you can stay right here on Sim TV for the next round of the 2021 Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series, round number 4 from Texas Motor Speedway. That will kick off at 7:15, 6:15 Central. So 7:15 on the East Coast, about 45 minutes from now. Long day here at Sim TV. We'll roll into the oval race and then Tuesday night, we'll be back with the Fuel Mission 22 Premier Series from Indianapolis, followed by Spec MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge from Mid-Ohio on Wednesday. And then Thursday, the Scars Lamborghini Super Trofeo and Prototype Challenge. They head to Mid-Ohio as well on Thursday evening. That'll be at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central. Friday, we're off. Saturday, we're back with the Outsider Racing League from Circuit of the Americas, which will be a fun one. Big old heavy stock cars racing at COTA. Then Sunday, right back here again for the continuation of round 5 of the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series. And we'll be back on March 14th for round number 2 of the Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series. Average day racing. Pretty average day, I'd say. 11th out of 21. Not a terrible day. James Liebrecht in the number 9, running just outside the top 10. Emmett Savage had gotten by him a little while ago. Remember that right front damage picked up from a collision with the pit straight wall after some sort of disconnection from his rig. An Apex V2R, with all the struggles they had in the middle of this race, they're going to put 2 of their cars in the top 10, but I thought they were going to have all 3 in the top 5 at one point in this race.
Yeah, that would have been a pretty safe bet if we were in Vegas, but none of this race has gone the way betting odds would say. And with 9 cars left on the lead lap, probably 8 by the end of this thing, it's Gavin Sanders that is way the heck out front. Tony Klusterman for Never Quit Racing second. Grid Life RWB, despite the issues and technical and rules-wise, salvaging what will ultimately look like to be a podium as they're continuing to navigate some of the lap traffic.
Up the inside of the 75 car, that's the NSS Cookie Jar car driven by Jason Roy. They've done their driver swap and have had an okay day. This car had issues early, found the wall into turn number 6. That's where that crinkle in the right front is from, and then obviously picked up a little bit of damage on the left side. That hasn't affected them a whole lot, but running 12th right now. And inside the top 10, some drivers that, again, we haven't mentioned a lot, again, is this Screeching Moose Motorsports car. They have just been so quiet today, despite their very loud name. Are running 6th. This is a great way to start the season. As I said, if you finish 6th, that's your worst effort the entire season. You could be in serious contention for this championship. So I'm really curious to see, especially because I think the Corvette might be the car to have at Sebring if this team will find themselves in contention at Sebring in about a month. So we'll keep our eye on this number 22. But again, started this race all the way back in 12th, jumped up to 6th, and that's where they remain.
Well, in their team notes, they say they'll be doing all of the iRacing major endurance events this season. And when you're in the rhythm of endurance racing and driving in that way, you often do have days like this where you don't need to be the fastest car, but you have nice, consistent performances. And we'll do a little callback to the pricing for this championship. Yes, there are prizes on the line, and yes, winning gets you the most opportunities to win that prize, but it is a ticket drawing out of the hat kind of lottery. So if you're Screeching Moose Motorsports, easy for me to say, and you're finishing 6th every time, you got a lot of tickets in that hat, and these drivers could come away the winners for the prizing, even if they don't win the championship.
Now it's interesting that you mentioned that they're running the entire iRacing Endurance Series, because guess where the next iRacing Endurance race is? It's at Sebring, if you don't count Bathurst. Let's focus on the North American Endurance Championship. Sebring is the next round. That's conveniently in March. Guess what our next round is? March. Guess where it is? Sebring. So I think they're going to have a lot of practice, a lot of laps in the C8R, and I'll bet you Screeching Moose Motorsports is a contender next time out. Sun is getting lower and lower in the sky here at Road America, the National Park of Speed in the United States. Gavin Sanders in command. Oh, he's on pit lane, Tom. Did they fuel the car enough? No, they did not. 40-second lead over Tony Klusterman. It's going to drop very quickly on pit road.
Well, and that became the question a little while ago. We didn't know after they completed their first round of pit stops whether or not they could go all the way to the end on fuel. So Sanders is the first to come back for more fuel, but he may not be the only one. We still have 8 minutes to go, and yes, if everybody's pushing it to the last minute to do a splash and dash, Sanders would be the first one to need to do it. And 8 minutes is a lot of time. 5 laps is a lot of time for other cars to come down the pit lane. Does Klusterman do it as well?
I thought it was
He does.
I thought this was a long way to go, Tom, so they're coming on down to fuel up one more time. And would you take tires? Make sure you don't take it accidentally. Looked like SPI Racing did not. They're already free and clear, so that looks like disaster averted. I thought that they had miscalculated perhaps, but no. He will pull away. Klusterman onto pit road now with the 121 Porsche. Where does Alessandrini go? He's going to stay out on course.
I wonder, with all of his weird issues, if he saved enough fuel in dealing with other stuff in a timed race. Does he even have to make a second pit stop? Will he have enough fuel?
Can you service the car when you're getting a stop and hold?
Well, no, but he's not burning the fuel either. So maybe he's burned a little bit less fuel by having the race that he's had. And if he's got enough fuel, he is definitely in second. He's closer to first. I still don't think he's got enough time. It's 24 seconds to first right now. But the Grid Life car will have less fuel to do. It may not be only third for that car.
Screeching Moose Motorsports just gave up 6th spot to Adam Crane in the number 18. So Crane will move on by.
Same question goes for that car. The VRS Racing Blue Corvette has had a lot of dramas. They won't need to refuel as much either if they need a splash and dash.
So about 5 laps to go here. Gavin Sanders in the 16 is your race leader. He's done pitting for the day as long as they didn't make a mistake that time around. Spent about 8 seconds in the box. That seems like plenty to me. And now it's a 24-second back to Alessandrini.
For third, though, Coda Racing picks up the point over Tony Klusterman, and it's tight. The Corvette for Coda Racing with Malcolm Straken at the wheel.
I think Klusterman's faster than the Coda Racing car, though, so we might see this position swap again.
And again, the Corvette is not pitted again. We don't have fuel data, so it's hard to say whether or not Coda Racing will come back down the pit lane, but with 4 to go this time by, we might see pit lane become pretty popular in the closing stages of this race.
Down the hill at the exit of the carousel. Lowest point of this racetrack is through the back straightaway area. Kind of dip on down a little bit more here through the kink, and then you're as low as the track goes. You climb the hill to the highest point. As we see that battle for third pick back up again.
Klusterman with a massive run through the kink, a lot of confidence going in there, and will easily pick up the point on the brakes down into Canada corner. Gets the car turned in and resumes third place, so it's back to a podium position for Never Quit Racing.
Hit 4 laps to go for the race leader, Gavin Sanders, through turn 3. Elsewhere in the field, are there any other battles picking up? Doesn't look like it. But will drivers come to pit road? We saw our first and second place cars come on down. They returned to the racetrack in the positions that they went in, with the exception of Klusterman dropping behind Alessandrini. So not a lot of shuffling, even with those pit stops in the late moments of this race.
Oh, Coda Racing just jumped back in front of Tony Klusterman. They're still battling side by side up
Whoa,
the front
they
straightaway.
touch.
Contact between the two. The Corvette goes around. Klusterman continues, but somewhere, maybe a mistake in turn 14 for the Porsche. No, it's a massive draft for the Corvette. Huge straight line speed.
That Corvette is a fast car. Sweeps to the right, and we'll have another look at it here. Off into turn 1. Does Klusterman turn down? Doesn't look like there was a lot of space there, Tom.
There was not a lot of space. Hard to say from that angle whether or not he should have been left more room.
Not gonna really get a much better one, I don't think. Yeah, it's hard to get a good look at it, but we're right on board with the Coda Racing car. How close was he to the right side of the racetrack? He was on the curb, Tom. I don't think that was his fault.
No, I agree. It's unfortunate that he was the only one that got anything from that, but they maintain their top 4 spot, but the hope for a podium is gone as they've dropped 10 seconds back from Klusterman. Both cars, no damage to note. A little bit of crinkle on the side panel there, but 4 minutes to go. It's not going to be a massive deal.
No, especially with the gaps that we're working with here in the front of the field. NSS Cookie Jar, driven by Jason Roy, has Darian Roy behind him in the Night Blind Racing number 02. That's one of those big old M8s. A lot of crinkled up damage on this car. And we could see a battle for 12th here before this thing is done and over. That M8 is definitely a big old car in the mirror. 613 Racing car has had an off down into turn 5, and I wonder, is this just getting in a little bit hot? Looks like it, all on his own. Kind of offline there a little bit, and then did he just catch the curb or lock up the rear? Something happened there. I'm on board and see if we can hear it. Oh.
Out of gas.
Clutching. He had the clutch pushed in to save fuel, lifted the clutch.
Oh, yeah.
And jostle the drivetrain. When you release the clutch after you press it in at that high speed, you got to make sure you release it carefully, Tom. But we now know that the 613 car is going to probably have to hit pit lane.
Been keeping tabs on pit lane. I haven't seen any other cars come down. We do have the BMW Overtake Motorsports that's been sitting on pit lane for a long time. That battle you were watching, actually, now both cars hit pit lane. I think that was Cookie Jar and the Night Blind cars, both splashing, and Night Blind's going to pick up the position on pit lane.
So Cookie Jar going to roll out behind him in the Corvette, so pass for position in pit road. A few more cars coming on down. And right back, here comes the Screeching Moose Motorsports car on the outside, a lap ahead of these drivers. Coming to 2 laps to go for Gavin Sanders in the number 16 SPI racing car. Started on pole, but that doesn't describe their day. They were very far from pole for the majority of that whole first sector or segment of this race. They dropped out with De Benedetto dropping out of the lead all the way as far down as 9th before they made that driver swap. And then Gavin Sanders climbs in with that short pit stop and put them out front of drivers who had taken tires. And here they are leading this race with 2 laps to go. Actually, this will be our final lap. Given a minute and 43 seconds left in this race, timing and scoring will update here across the line. And for Gavin Sanders, this should be, unless they selected +1 at the end. We'll see. If we pick up the white flag, this will be the last lap for Sanders. And Grid Life RWB following in second. This is a pretty amazing comeback. I know that we expected Alessandrini to be fast, and his teammate couldn't get in. They had to come serve a 55-second stop and hold back to second. The only thing keeping him from winning this race is a little bit more luck, and having Sanders have some bad luck.
And some assumptions we can make is that teammate Austin Cobb would have been every bit as fast as Alessandrini, and without the 55-second hold plus trip down pit lane, that 21-second deficit to first would have been a massive lead. Meanwhile, Adam Crane in the wall at Canada corner, tries to get it turned again. It looks like he's all by himself, sitting there in the top 5.
Did he just get into Canada corner too hot or get the gravel on exit? Really fast into the corner, then leaves and just catches the gravel with the left rear tire, spins him off. No major contact there, just drags the pitot tube against the tire barrier, and we'll get back rolling.
And he was really on it last time through before he crosses now. It was a 2:01.3, which is almost as fast as his fastest lap of the race here in the closing stages. So that's basically Adam Crane going for qualifying, and consequences bit him. Screeching Moose almost caught back up. The battle for 5th is pretty close there between the two, but I don't think Taylor Parsons is going to be able to outpace Crane.
No, but if he makes that mistake again, he'll be ready to pounce and grab a top 5 away. Meanwhile, Gavin Sanders down here into Canada corner. Timer will tick to 0 here, which will mean that this should be the last lap of this race as we come out of Canada corner. Yes, white flag has been flown, and will come up the hill for Gavin Sanders from SPI Racing from pole position all the way down to 9th to the top again. A roller coaster day for SPI Racing, De Benedetto and Sanders for the first round of the 2021 Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series are going to go to victory lane at Road America. And the Pink Pig is victorious again across the line for SPI Racing. Second place, Grid Life RWB is going to come up the hill. And for just Alessandrini, couldn't get his teammate in, but he will end up coming up the hill and finishing unofficially in second. Tony Klusterman in the Never Quit Racing Porsche coming up the hill as well to finish in third. Meanwhile, Emmett Savage in the background. This is the car that was running up towards the front, had major issues coming to or just after the halfway point, broke something and ended up hitting the fence, but recovering for what looks like it'll be a 9th place position. We, for some reason, have a timing issue here. Gavin Sanders recorded in 9th, but he did win this race. And celebrating down there at the bottom of turn 5 here, Tom, as the rest of the field comes across the line. And we're not done yet, because here's Screeching Moose Motorsports in the 881. This is for 6th. They collide. 3 cars all involved, and that's the 87. Nope, that's someone else involved here too. That's the BMW. But drama's in the final couple corners for Screeching Moose and the 881 of Zach Veneer.
Oh, there's an awkward moment happening here. Veneer didn't expect them to, didn't expect to catch them at that rate of speed. Tries for the corner, maybe thought it was clear, but that was definitely Veneer turning into Taylor Parsons. And they are going to swap positions as just here for SR also goes by. Looks like the 87 car picked up that position, the Corvette in front. And Parsons continuing. Is that car out of fuel?
Sounds like it.
Yeah, no drive.
Coming up the hill at the last moment. Last car on the lead lap, though, so will not lose any positions.
Well, look at that. Apex V2R picking up a bunch of spots there in the last, between the two cars. 6th and 8th for Veneer and Savage in the end.
Wow. All right. Well, let's debrief and have a look at our race results. I'm hoping that the timing and scoring will correctly represent what happened there at the end. Again, a bit of a timing and scoring shuffle. There is SPI Racing. They've got to shuffle this around. There they are, top of the board by 20 seconds over Grid Life RWB, Tom. From pole to win, but it wasn't straightforward.
I was going to say, I don't think you could write a more complex first to first place scenario than we saw, but that was an incredible amount of just composure for them to even make it work the way that they did, as almost every other factor of the race had issues.
Grid Life RWB in second, then Never Quit Racing with Kloosterman behind the wheel finished in third. Coda Racing in the 888 Corvette in fourth. VRS Satellite Racing Blue, a troubled day for them. They could have and probably should have won this race given the way things panned out, but it didn't pan out that way, Tom. Adam Crane and his teammate both having problems, but they'll still come home in fifth.
There's a bunch of drivers with that story leaving today. They could have at some point and should have at some point won this race, but SPI is the one at the top. And then Apex V2R 880, Screeching Moose Motorsports 613 Racing rounding out the top 10 after 21 cars took the green flag.
Then down the board, Average J Racing comes home in 11th in the number 9 car. Night Blind Racing in 12th. NSS Cookie Jar in 13th. LSM 14th. And MC Motorsports, that 66 car, was so competitive early, Tom, but not consistent enough. They ended up coming across the line 15th with the hood missing off that Porsche.
Yeah, a couple extra stops through the pit lane as well. Then Event Matrix, Ecto Esports, both of them struggles before we get to our real sob stories of the day. VRS Satellite Red not completing the race. 17 laps down. Overtake Racing, they were going to be a lot of fun to watch early on for us as well. 25 laps down with major damage. Apex V2R 882 with serious issues. 26 laps down. And then finally the RSC C team car out very early.
And no start for Team RSC. They did not compete in this race. We have our race, let's talk to our third place finisher for Never Quit Racing. Tony Kloosterman brings it home third in the Never Quit Racing Porsche. Tony, congratulations, a podium in the first round of the season. Lots of dramas up towards the front, but for you and your team, pretty calm, cool, collected day. Not a lot of damage on the car. Bring it home third. Take us through your day and surviving the mayhem to finish in third.
Well, I think you got it right there. You needed to survive today. We knew we wouldn't make it on fuel, so it was just go as quickly as we could and try and gap as much as we could, so that when we had to stop, we'd still be in decent position. I managed to on the last stint there, we didn't take any tires at all today, so I think that really helped us. And really unfortunate incident with Malcolm. Not intentional by any stretch of the imagination. I thought I had given him enough room, and I just feel terrible because Malcolm's dad and I, back in the 70s, used to stage rally against each other. So I know Malcolm, and I express my sincere apologies for what happened there.
Well, a really strong start to the season. We head to Sebring in a couple of weeks. Bit bumpier. How do you feel about this Porsche at a bumpier racetrack, and do you think you can even improve on a third-place finish at Sebring in a few weeks?
I only started driving the car this week, so I guess we'll have to put some laps in Sebring and find out how we go there. I've got lots of laps at Sebring in the V8 supercar. That's the car I normally drive. So know the track, and it'll be fun. We'll see how we do. I think we had a good, maybe above what our weight is for a finish today, but we're going to take it.
All right, Tony Kloosterman and Never Quit Racing, third place tonight in the number 121 Porsche. Congratulations, Tony. We'll see you at Sebring.
Very much.
We move on now to Gavin Sanders, winner of the first round of the 2021 Race Sim Canada Endurance Series. And today was a little wild, Gavin. Your teammate started off on pole, dropped down the order. You jumped in the car, took it all the way to the top. But lots of issues around the front of the field, and you somehow managed to keep the car on course and not have any problems. Take us through your day and how things landed in your lap this afternoon.
Yeah, it was definitely an attrition race. Clearly, obviously. A lot of people crashing out, having issues, and I think after Justin had his spin in the first stint, it was kind of just survive, see what we can do, debate saving fuel, pitting to the end. We ended up going full on fuel, but and just pit short fueling at the end there, but honestly it went really well. Bit of luck obviously with all the stuff that went on, but great way to start this championship.
Looking ahead to Sebring, do you think you can go 2 for 2? There was a lot of circumstances that led to this car being out front, but you did sit on pole. So how confident do you feel about going to Sebring and repeating what you did here today?
We've been driving this car for a while. We ran the 24 with it. We ran a bunch of endurance races prior to even this championship. So I think we'll be confident, but obviously this series is so competitive. anybody could win, as was proven today.
Anybody could win, but it was your team that did it. Gavin Sanders and SPI Racing bringing it home in victory lane. Congratulations and good luck to you in Sebring on March 14th.
Thank you.
All right, let's wrap up the interviews for today, Tom. Dramatic race, but also that first third of that race was absolutely spectacular. GTE cars race spectacularly, and we've got 4 rounds remaining. Next one up, Sebring in a few weeks.
And obviously the unpredictable always stays unpredictable, but that first third of this race, as you said, predictably exciting, and I think we can take that away. The other thing that was a big takeaway for me is tire strategy. I wonder if now that we've seen how the first race plays out, the remainder of these 2-hour races, will we see more drivers on the same strategy, keep things even closer than they were today for more of that hot racing action, but things shift big time for Sebring, and it's going to be exciting.
A couple weeks from now, right here on Sim TV for the Race Sim Canada Endurance Series. Thanks so much for Race Sim Canada Apex V2R for coming on board to sponsor this series. And we'll be back with you on March 14th for round number 2. Stay put one more time for a word from our sponsors. We'll be back with you in a few weeks. And stay put on Sim TV in half an hour. The Coca-Cola of Kokomo India Lead Series goes green from Texas. I'm Kyle Heyer with Tom O'Gorman. We'll see you next time for Race Sim Canada, the Canadian Endurance Series.